Welcome back to Kevin Pollak's Chat Show. I am, as always, so happy to see you.
What?
Got to blink. I had to blink. I had a bad blink. You're not buffering. I missed that bit.
You missed it?
It's only been 3 weeks since we did it last. Just back from Chicago, the hometown-ish of my guest today. And man, did I have a great time. Remember last week when, at this exact moment when I was bitching and moaning about Captain Brian's, the gig I did in Marco Island? Off the hook.
Captain Brian's off the hook.
Such a dick. Captain Brian. No time in the Navy. Didn't own a boat. Just named himself Captain Brian.
It's like Captain Crunch.
A little bit. The only one's animated and adorable.
And the other is on a cereal box. Thank you.
Good night.
And he cuts the roof of your mouth.
Cuts through your mouth, guaranteed.
Yeah, but he's capping.
Yeah,
he
it's
is.
true. He is
That's
Captain.
true. He's capping.
This is Captain. So we went from that shithole to one of the greatest clubs in the country. It's in Schaumburg, out there in the ritzy suburb of Schaumburg. But man, oh man, nice 500-seater, built beautifully, state-of-the-art. I sold out 4 of the 5 shows. What?
What? Oh, look at you.
Just saying it happened.
Bonus.
Look at
You.
I don't do that always. So it was really great. It was really exciting. And
Maybe they thought you were Marklin Baker.
they did. They sold tickets as
Cousin
Marklin
Larry
Baker.
Appleton?
Yeah.
You know what? It was because the Cubs didn't make the postseason.
That's it.
So all those Cubs fans...
Nothing to do.
Nothing to do.
Yeah. Bored sick.
Bored sick out of their minds. Let's go see Kevin Pollak.
I met 2 fans of everyone here in the studio and the crew. One was the first press I did for the show, ABC affiliate in Chicago. The morning news anchor was interviewing me, showed 2 clips from the chat show
Wow.
during the interview. They did their research. They downloaded the clips. I was the first. Very, very exciting. Because it's the kind of thing where when I do those interviews around the country, I will try to promote the chat show. You know, I also do a, So you're here doing stand-up. But now, this guy had loaded up a couple of clips, said that Sugar Ray Leonard was the best interview of Sugar Ray he'd ever seen, blah, 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 and then mentioned you 2 by name. Mentioned you 2 by name to Sammy and Ronnie. Maybe that wasn't
What?
you 2.
I don't think it was us. I think it was us.
Why am I Ron? Why am I the shaved silverback gorilla?
That's J-Mac.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true.
I meant Sam Levine and J-Mac.
I got recognized this weekend while I was shoving my face full of Five Guys bacon cheeseburger.
Cher?
Somebody asked if I was Jamie Foxx from the chat show. The guy sitting next to me.
Not just one. You were surrounded eventually.
What?
Was it more than one?
No, it was just him and a friend. And the friend didn't know what the dude was talking about.
Right.
He never heard of the show.
Conversation sounds really pornographic.
5 Guys? Let's start
Five
with 5
Guys?
Guys. Yeah. Shoveling your
Five
face
Guys
with 5
burger.
Guys. She's not wrong. You did say you were shoveling your face
Five
with
Guys
5
burgers
Guys.
and fries. Now the chat room's like, 5 Guys all at once?
Oh, no. Wow. You got to be familiar with maybe...
It's a huge burger chain.
It may be the best fast food French fry, there I said it, in the world. The 5 Guys French fry. Skin on and...
I am a fry snob. It's one of my favorite fries. But here's my complaint, Five Guys, if anyone's listening out there. Their fries are too big. They don't make like a small, like their regular is enough to feed 3 people. And if I'm there by myself, like I cannot justify buying a fry just because, and it's not the money, it's because I'm crazy and I can't waste food. So they need to make a smaller, like single portion of fries.
You need to separate, you need to put a little pause in between because I'm crazy, pause, 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 and I can't waste food. These are 2 different things.
So, yes.
Sammy,
Yeah, buddy.
I need to hear about your week, please. You were recognized, of course, also for the chat show.
I was recognized for the chat show and my fine work on That So Raven. That is the gift that keeps on giving, let me tell you.
How are those $17
They are
checks?
so good.
Sweet,
Putting in
right?
a new pool in
Table.
my table. But
Putting in a new pool cue.
full cube, half a full cube. Firstly, last night I got to hang out with Mr. Don Cheadle.
Name drop.
Had to,
Sure.
because he's so handsome.
How is Dr. Cheadle?
He's wonderful.
Did you mention the show? And he said, yeah, I've been meaning to do that.
Yeah, I did, and he was. I don't think I'll bring it up again. But I just want to point out we were
How many
at the,
Academy Award winners do I have to get? We have
Honest
another
to God.
nominee today.
Honest to God.
Yeah.
Um,
We had a 3-timer last week.
wow, your voice really went up there.
Really went up there. That was lawn. That was lawn
Or
territory.
Charlie Day.
That was a little Charlie Day.
I was with my lovely girlfriend Eve at the wrap party of House of Lies,
Which debuts.
which debuts on Showtime in January. It is a show that she works on. She's very proud of, and so am I.
You
Why
went as
would
a
she
date.
turn my office into a house of lies?
I said that to you last week.
She,
With James Hill.
you were the date of someone who worked
I
on
was
the
the
show.
date. I was the +1, which was great. So no pressure on that.
Where was the party?
Some club in Echo Park.
Be more general.
I could not be any more specific if I wanted to.
Okay. But it was good.
Bootleggers? I don't know. Yeah, everything was fine. It was lovely, and Don said, "Stop calling."
Wow. Weird thing to say.
I don't know why I chose to tell you this on the air.
Well,
But-
it is something you maybe would have been better over makeup.
Indeed.
So I do want to thank everyone at the Improv there at the Schomburg. I really had a great weekend and good time. What the hell is happening in the room now?
Somebody said that I don't believe in Don Cheadle like he's Santa Claus. I just thought that was really funny.
I don't believe in Don Cheadle. He's not real. He's not real. There's Tooth Fairy.
That just made me laugh
There's
really
The
hard.
Rock, Dwayne Johnson, also not real, and then Don Cheadle. I wrote just back from Chicago, and boy, are my politicians corrupt. They have another. How many? They have 3 governors now, and Blagojevich is still pending. Can't say his name.
I don't think it's pending anymore.
Any
I think
other
the
way.
jury came back on that and they're
No,
appealing.
he's guilty.
Yeah.
What's pending is what the sentence will be.
Right.
Yeah, they haven't. So that was fine. Okay, let's do some Ask Kevin, because you have questions. You write to us at contact@kevinpolicschatshow.com, and guess what? Robert Hawks. He asked Kevin. Look, there's a graphic and a pair of teeth. I always thought, what's happening now? I watched Bellhop on the plane home.
Oh, yeah?
The Jerry Lewis film. Boy, is that
You can never go wrong.
Boy, is that not really a movie. I always thought it terrific that and I forgot his name or much else about it, the first Project Greenlight series on HBO from Stolen Summer. The
Pete
cast-
Jones?
Pete Jones is his name.
Thank you very
How
much.
dare this person?
I'll be here all week.
Thank you, sir.
Literally, I have nothing else going on.
We want you here. You don't have to
Okay.
justify
No, all
it.
right, it's fine.
Antoon's out.
Okay, great.
Cast you as the rabbi. The reason I remember is while watching the series, you were the first movie star. Wow, just my mom calls me that, but thank you. To interact with the guy like he and you were both real people. Looking back, that shoot was probably less fun or involved for you than HBO made it look. Any story from that experience? It was one of the early reality shows, now that I think of it. The Project Greenlight, the first season. The kid from the Transformer, Shia LaBeouf,
Yep.
was on season 2.
He was in...
As an unknown young.
Oh, they were awful.
Yeah, they really were bad to him. They were horrible
What's
to
the
him.
name of that
And
one?
they made Aidan Quinn and I, who were old friends from Avalon, look like we hated each other. It was one of the first times where, well, first of all, I was asked to do the movie not really knowing about the HBO series, this reality show, and I said yes to the movie, and they said, oh, by the way, there's going to be a documentary crew following you guys around. You're cool with that, right? Yeah, it's called B-roll. I've seen them. They're around. So what? Well, it's kind of a thing for HBO. I don't know. Now, okay. Can't do one without the other. Fuck. All right, sure. Great. And let me guess, no extra additional funds will come my way for... No, just it's part of
Wow.
the... But it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Pfft, I'm in.
Yeah.
So, the cameras would follow us around, and Bonnie Hunt and I would tease the camera crew saying, your show's going to suck. We're having fun. Who's going to watch this? It's going to be horrible television. Aha. They went back to the editing bay with a mandate, which we now know to be all reality shows. But back then it was, what the fuck? I told a joke and Aidan Quinn rolled his eyes? That happened 3 weeks before when he rolled his eyes. And now they create... God, it was horrible. It really was horrible.
It's funny too, because like your IMDb page, like people will say, like, "Did you ever see the Project Greenlight? Kevin Pollock's an asshole." And it's like it was all edited.
such a dick because we
Yeah.
were doing this outdoor shot in the rain, and they got me on camera with the thing with the umbrella going. I'm not going out there. You know, I was joking with the.
Yeah.
That looks like really an actor saying, "I don't want to get wet."
Look, Kevin, I've been with you on set.
I'm wet all the
I'm
time.
just saying.
I'm
You
always
always
wet.
carry that umbrella. You never want to go out there.
No, without the
You're
umbrella.
stealing people's per diems left and right.
Let's be clear. The umbrella is an affectation. The umbrella's got nothing to do with precipitation at all. It's an affectation. All right. This one's from Tracy. We all have seen Jamie's Halloween costume on Twitter. What are you going as this year? I am doing my homage to the fallen hero of mine, Peter Falk. I'll be walking around as his famed character, Lieutenant Columbo. Be a lot of this. Excuse me, and then people go, "Oh, I'm sad he's dead." But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to commit because I love him to death.
You better be careful nobody slaps you on the back while you're doing the face. Or it will get stuck
I
like
might
that.
stick that way.
It will get stuck like that.
Yeah. I tried to make it stick that way once. I thought it'd be good character stuff. There was a character actor in the westerns who had one of them eyes, and other than Marty Feldman. Anywho, so Lieutenant Columbo will be my big Halloween this year. It's a huge cop out for me. I've been doing the impression for 35 years. It's like the worst costume ever. But he passed, and I must pay my respects. This last one is from Mumra Jack, because that's a name. This was on the Twitter. Was this the one that was on the Twitter? Yes.
Oh.
You saw this, right?
I did see this.
Yeah, Sammy and I are going to take a little umbrage here. So he wrote to @SamLevine and @Kevin Pollak, our Twitter names. There it is on your screen. Those of you listening, if you had a screen. 2 years ago, I waited on you both in New York City. You didn't tip. I assumed a mistake. Hurts when I see bastards with an E and a few good men with no O's.
Then a frowny face.
And then a frowny
Emoticon.
face.
Yeah.
So I tweeted back immediately.
Yeah.
I've never not tipped
Yeah.
in my life.
Yeah.
Even when it was the worst service ever, I still give 10% because the person's working for a living. And
Sure.
I don't know why they're having a shitty day. Maybe they don't mean to take it out on me.
Right.
Do you remember
We were trying to pin this down.
yeah, we're trying to figure this
the
figure
last
it
time
out.
you and I had a meal in New York was...
Like years, like when we first met him.
Yeah, well, we
went to the
dined,
UCB.
We went to the UCB, and before that, we dined at that
Some Italian place that my
joint.
sister recommended that wasn't very good. Sorry, Jacqueline.
We stiffed that.
We did not
I
stiff
know
that
we
guy.
did. I
We
know
would
we
never
did.
stiff.
I know
I
we
DM'd
did.
the guy the same thing you did, which is I've left very rarely a handful of shitty tips, but I've never left no tip.
It's
So
unheard of.
either it was a mistake or someone stole your tip.
I say check the busboy.
Yeah,
I say go back in time
yeah.
with Doc Brown.
But yeah, I don't think.
Marty, the busboy took the tip. And then this follow-up. I thought I'd bring to your attention, Sammy.
Yeah, please.
From @Manna Lee Moore, @Kevin Pollak, so she didn't include you, she didn't see this. I served you once years ago. You tipped 100% on the check for exclamation points. Only a few others ever did that. You rock. And so I thought I would offer up a little defense here today.
Character witness.
From 0 to 100%. You be the judge. But yeah, Sammy, come on. The three of us ate at that.
There's no way we would ever not leave a tip. No way ever.
Also, what kind of a thing to tweet?
Truly.
You know?
What kind of a thing
It's like
to tweet?
it's like a weird ass humble brag almost.
Yeah.
I waited on you guys and you didn't tip. I assumed it was a mistake. Love ya.
Right.
That's kind of.
And what was
Yeah.
it that cinched his assumption that it was not a mistake? Out of curiosity.
I don't know. I want to set this guy on fire. Is my problem. Yeah.
Not wrong.
And unfortunately,
New York.
But it worked. His little scam worked because I then
You retweeted it. I
retweeted it
resisted.
to 224,000 people.
Yeah, I get nasty comments written to me all the time, fully aware that they're only being read by
But
30 or so people.
I knew my followers would get in this guy's shit, and they did.
And they sure did.
Yeah, no, way beyond the one I just read. There was like 20 replies going, this guy's a total cheese ball, blah, blah, blah. Hey, we've asked you to please write to us at contact@kevinpollakchatcher.com and tell us how you do KPCS. How do you do us? This one from Don Merritt, San Lorenzo, DL, and then some other Spanish words. Oh my God, he's calling, this is from Madrid. He's writing from Madrid. That's why there's so many Spanish words. Go back. San Lorenzo, what? I gotta not be a dick about it. San Lorenzo de El Escorial of Madrid? No, de Madrid. Dr. Chen is trying to help me.
How's your Spanish, Dr.
Madrid,
Chen?
Spain. Muy bueno. Muy bueno. He went ahead and offered up some Spanish. Hi, guys. I watch the show on YouTube and have been since about show number 5. I'm an old American guy living and working in Spain, and I can't keep up with these young whippersnappers and their iTunes and U-Pads. I wish they'd stay off my lawn.
Is it Clint Eastwood?
It's Clint Eastwood in Spain.
It's Clint Eastwood.
Thanks for all the
Oh.
great work. Cheers. Don Merritt, San Lorenzo de El Isleon.
Yeah.
U-Pads.
The
Kids, get
U-Pads.
off the lawn. Hey, you kids, get away from that window. Why? So there you go. He's since show number 5. He watches us on the YouTube. Do they have? Does the chat show have its own YouTube channel under that name?
Oh, it damn well better.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Josh Nagan from the outer room. Mike's still crying about his Red Sox. He's not even watching the show.
You know, coming from a guy.
Wait a sec. Let me just Google meltdown.
Do you
Hold on a
want
second. What?
Yeah, check it out. Oh, here's some of my favorite statistics. One, the
Yeah.
Red Sox were 77-0 this season in games where they were leading after the 8th inning. That's the
That's
first
not
one.
possible, is
That
it?
is possible. That is a thing.
77-0.
Oh, had not happened.
Had not
Running perfect.
lost when they were leading into the 8th
into the
inning.
8th inning or later. Yeah.
Until
Until the most important game of the season.
holy shit.
And
It was a heartbreak, and Yankee fans were going, you know, love you guys. I mean, it was really
yeah.
no one could believe what they saw.
And they went, I think, 7-20 in September, and the last team to do that hadn't happened in like 60 years or something.
It's fun to watch history, isn't it?
It is fun to watch history, especially it couldn't have happened to a nicer fan base, by the way. Just warm, loving people. They don't drink too much or throw things at other fans.
I'm sensing some facetious.
I don't think they've ever cursed at a stranger. Could not have happened to a better fan base. In
Would
all of
they
sport.
indeed ask you to Pakyaka the yacht?
They might.
Okay.
If it wasn't completely unintelligible from all the drinking, the afternoon drinking, and the night drinking.
Said the Chicago Cubs fan.
Well, I'm just saying.
And now it's time for a winner. Now that we've discussed losers, it's time for a winner. At Berg CT, perhaps Connecticut, perhaps upset at the last dissertation. He has won the Larry King Game T-shirt. At Berg CT, we're going to need your shirt size. You gave us your mailing address, but I don't want to send a generic size, sir. I'd rather send one that you're actually going to wear. So please write us again at contact@kevinpollakchatshow.com. The winning, actually, there's a very specific reason that'll become obvious as to why this was this week's winner. Welcome back to Larry King. Just between you and me, Pierce Morgan is a lousy lay. Most of the time. Olive Branch, Mississippi, you have a question for Sam Levine.
What the hell?
Hey! There's this week's winner.
I'm on the Larry King show?
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. Are we
Well,
in
somebody
heaven?
was calling in with a question for you.
Speaking of t-shirts, I want to thank everybody out there that buys a t-shirt and a mug because that financed my Halloween costume. Thanks, guys.
That's true. Jamie's super cool Halloween costume, which we're going to
There you
have
go.
pictures for you next week.
Because I'm going to Disney World.
She's going to Disney World. She'll be missing next week's show with Chris Pratt.
Which I'm a little
Love
upset
him.
about because he's awesome.
He is awesome. But we're going to have photos of you and your Rapunzel. It's going to be exciting. It's already been exciting for me.
Isn't true.
No, no problem. I'm unbelievably excited about today's guest, so let's just finally stop the shenanigans and begin the actual important part of the show. Dr. Chen, you all right over there? Yep, okay. Are you adjusting anything other than your disposition? No? Okay. My next guest, like myself, has appeared in 117 films. And we wait patiently for filmmakers to acknowledge how brilliant we are, and then we step in. I noticed this about other actors who have this ability to be real in front of the camera. And it reached an apex of sorts, her ability to be charming without swinging for the fences in a movie called Sideways. And boy, was she feted for her effort. The only member of that astonishing cast who was nominated for an Oscar. She won the Independent Spirit Award, the Film Critics Award, from nominated for Golden Globe. It was endless. We're going to talk about all these awards and more Her mom won an Emmy. Talk about that as well, too. Please welcome Virginia Madsen. Hello, darling.
Hello.
I'm very excited about your mom's Emmy. This is so cool. I mean, it happened a while ago, but first of all, I want to thank you for the accommodations of your trailer this summer.
We shared a toilet, indeed we did.
As it were. We shared a toilet before we met. I enjoyed one of your caramels, and I think you know what I'm saying.
I was okay with it too.
Yeah,
I was okay with it.
I showed up at the Summer Dog Days set, and they said, "Well, you know, Virginia's not working today. We could put you in there." And I said, "You sure she won't mind? She won't mind. You missed Mustache Monday." And I said, "What are you talking about?"
Oh yeah, we had a lot of fun and games on that show, which I like to do on every show I'm on, because it's, you know, like I have different themes for different days, and it's kind of good for morale, and I try not to make it too annoying.
Right.
But like, for instance, on the film, on that film, we did Mustache Mondays, and Caitlin, my assistant, comes with bags of, you know, those sort of stick-on mustaches.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time you do that, there's like a few people that wear them, but then it starts catching on, and anyone who puts on a fake mustache becomes
Frito Bandito?
no, some kind of alter ego of themselves.
Yes.
And like the person you would least expect will keep the mustache on all day.
Wow.
Like there was one very reserved guy on the set, and we were like, oh, he's never gonna do it. And I was like, dude, come on. And all of a sudden, he was like Francois. And he went around just like in this kind of like, he walked differently, and he just left it on, just didn't comment on it, but just sort of left it on all day. Was still reserved.
I like this.
Somebody else sort of like became slightly like a pedophile, and you were like, you thought he was this really like clean cut, you know, collegiate young college dude, and then he was like, you know?
Wow.
And then
he got pervy.
Yeah, he got really pervy, yeah.
Sweet.
And not in a good way pervy.
No,
either,
no.
Because
No.
there is a good way.
Of course.
And for some reason, when I wear my mustache, I become Manuel.
Aha.
Every time, I'm like, Manuel. But I usually have to wear mine on my finger.
What?
Because I can't wear it while I'm shooting.
Right, of course.
But I keep it close.
Oh,
So
I
can,
see. So you can load up.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
And were you inspired by someone originally that was tomfoolery such as this on another set, and you said, I want to do that?
No, it's sort
you
of.
You made this all up?
I did, because it came about on a film where things were sort of dire, and it was a very difficult shoot, and you know, people were getting along all right, but it was just like, it was a really low budget, and the weather was terrible, and so I started doing this to kind of just pick up morale, and then it became Disco Friday, and then it became a luau on Wednesday.
What happens at Disco Friday? Because I just missed that. I showed up on Saturday.
Disco Friday was a huge success on Dog Dave, because everybody has like an inner 80s trashy person. And so, you know, we had bags of sunglasses, and again, like the most unlikely people would show up at the makeup trailer to pick up their 80s gear, and they'd be like, can I come in? And suddenly there was like big hair, and oh yeah, suddenly there was like guy liner going around. It was excellent.
Big
it was
bags
really good.
of fake blow. We did an 80s themed party for Jamie's birthday. Was it last year?
A couple years
2 years ago.
Fake blow.
Antune. Antune
Jason
had a fake
Antune
bag
had a
of
giant
cocaine,
bag of
because he
fake
went like
blow.
as an 80s like villain. He had like
From
the pop
Miami Vice.
collar, yeah,
Miami
like the
Vice
pop
villain.
collar and like the
Because it was
sweater.
bad then. It was really bad. Fashion was bad. Like basically everyone was an inverted triangle.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like everything
Crazy
was
shoulder pads.
and then like little tiny feet with like little boots, maybe scrunchy socks, but like little tiny pointy boots. It was so bizarre.
Yeah.
It was not a pleasant time.
Yeah.
Not a good time for music. I know people are going to be mad at me for that, but overall, it really wasn't that great.
Well, if you liked a certain kind of music from the 80s, a very specific style, how would you...
80s new wave.
80s
God,
new
I
wave.
love New Wave.
Yeah.
80s
Loved
new
it.
wave.
Like that's
The
what,
Go-Go's,
Yeah.
Devo, come on.
Yeah, I'm like
Everything else was shit.
I love like
Yeah.
Talking Heads, Peter
Talking
Gabriel.
Heads. Okay,
like
all
that,
right.
yeah.
I stand corrected. You're right.
It's the new wave. It's
Talking
the
Heads.
you don't like the pop, which I understand
80s
completely.
pop was shit.
80s pop was crap, but
Yeah.
it's
But
like,
I listened to it.
yeah.
Don't tell Paula Abdul. She's out there hiding.
I know. I loved her.
Yeah. And so you had this other film where you felt everyone needed cheering up, and it worked, and
Yeah.
now it's a tradition.
And it's also like I you know, it's good to bring an ice cream truck once in
Yeah.
a while, or coffee truck, or.
Have you ever worked on a movie though where they pay you nothing and then these trucks start showing up when you? This happened to me.
Well, if I'm making nothing, if I'm doing a scale movie, I kind of don't. I'm not going to order the In-N-Out truck, you know.
Right.
But if I'm making like some really good cash on,
Sure.
then I feel like I like to share,
Yeah.
you know. And it's also a way to. It's also just a way to say thank you. Like a lot of
Absolutely.
times on, like, you know, we had White Castle Wednesdays on Dog Dave. And that was a kind of thing where people kept coming up and thanking me. And I was like, no, this is my thank you
Yep.
to you know, for working at a lower salary and, you know, just staying with the show and working so hard.
Yeah.
And there was,
It makes such a difference.
Yeah.
I meant when the
Makes a huge
producers.
difference.
I worked on a movie a couple of years ago, and they figured out a way to pay everyone nothing. And then the
Terrible.
producers would bring around a coffee truck and an ice cream truck and a hamburger truck, and we were like,
but that's like $600, like for the hamburger truck, probably about $5, depending on the size of the crew. If they're dropping anywhere from $350 to $600, like they could buy better coffee for the craft service. You know what I mean? Like they
Exactly.
could better spend that money.
way better spend that money.
But that's kind of always a curiosity to me, like sort of the way that funds are.
Almost as bad as the government with the $900 toilet seat and all that stuff.
Yes, as bad as that, especially when you're in it.
Yeah.
And I was working on this, another really, really low budget. I think we had $1 million, like 1.2 for the budget of the film. And there were some, and I don't want to say which one it was because they were just wonderful people that were trying to make this movie. And
Right.
But there was a point in after working about 15 hours that they would run out of coffee. And I thought, okay, it's one thing if you can't provide food, you know, run down to Subway or something, but if you run out of coffee, that's just like, you know, fisting somebody, you know, on the crew. That's just like, you know,
No difference.
I don't know what that is, but I'm just saying, you know, it's just,
sounds
it's
bad.
really a big FU to the crew
Yeah.
that is going the extra mile to work, you know, 15, 19-hour days to make your movie that's probably not going to be that good.
You know, I've
and-
made a few movies actually where they fisted some people, and it's not as bad as you think. It's not
Sammy,
as bad as you think.
You want to name names?
Yeah, you know the movies.
But you know, when they've got a lot of interns and
Yes.
which translates into those who work for free.
We have
you
one of
know,
our own,
oh, you
our
know.
lovely Adam, working his way through school, and he's out there. Adam, I don't know
Well,
if
I
you-
hope you have coffee for him. I'm sure you do.
I'm still
we-
convinced
That
he's a
reminds me.
spy.
We feed the son of
Still
a bitch.
convinced.
Coffee, hell, he's got everything he wants.
Adam, wait for me out back. when we're done.
For the fisting?
If he's lucky.
Well, I want to talk firstly. One of the several things, you know, J Mac, one of our producers, puts together a pretty lengthy dossier, and then I go through.
Oh my,
So-
mine is lengthy.
Well, I want to hear a little bit. I want to hear a little bit about the magic act you and your brother did, because that.
Oh God.
It's the things that we do, because I lip synced Bill Cosby's album at 10, and it was my act for like 5 years. I mean, I milked this thing into the ground. So how long
Well-
did the magic act last?
Well, you know, I also have an older sister, Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
It was me and Sherry and Michael, and we were all show business kids without being in show business. And
Does that mean you guys, because your dad was a firefighter, your mom worked in the corporate world initially, and so you didn't really come from a show business family?
no,
You
not
just
at all.
loved.
We just loved to perform, and I was very, very certain that I was going to be an actress, and it was my career, so I took it very seriously.
Little ham bone.
And yes, we were. And so my mom really encouraged us to perform, and so we could do plays in the backyard, we could do magic shows. I got very into puppet shows for a long time and making puppets and
Wow.
anything except for professional work.
Yeah.
Like she wouldn't let me get an agent, she wouldn't let me go out for auditions, and I was so mad.
When you were
And-
like 13, 14?
no, I wanted to do that when I was like 7.
Wow.
You know, I would see one of those, you know, 7-Up commercials, or I would see Zoom, or
Right.
what is that? I was like, Mom,
What the hell?
I want to be on that. And she was like, well, you'll have to wait. I was like, Mom, but I'm an actress. I'm like Betty Davis, and I need to do it, Mom. I need to be known. I need to be seen.
And you're 7.
Yeah. And she was just like, well, you'll have to wait till you grow up and you finish high school, and then you can go to college or you can go to acting school. And this would go on and on. But her reasoning was,
You're a child?
I'm a child, but she said that she didn't want me to lose the magic. And
Of being a child. Or the magic
of what I do.
Right.
You know, and sometimes I understood what that meant, but I understood it much more when I grew up. And I still have the magic. You know, the night before my first day of shooting, I'm nervous, I can't sleep, I still love what I do. And I think for a lot of people who start out really, really young, sometimes they lose that. They lose their spark, they lose their fire, they lose their sense of fun or their sense of make-believe when they grow up and want to continue on as a career. So she held me away from it, and I'm very grateful that she did that.
I would think so. Before every take, his entire career, Jack Lemmon said, magic time, to himself.
He did?
For every take.
Oh my God.
Entire career. I'd heard about it, and then when I had a chance to work with him, sure enough. And it was literally getting a cup of coffee and whatever it is, it's definitely to himself. It's not in any way, shape, or form letting people know that this is something he does.
Oh, I love that.
And it was very, you know, subliminal and yet
Well, you know, when you meet people,
powerful.
and I'm sure you've had this experience as I have, when you meet people who are still creating a character and they're still having that magic time, and others that have become a little more jaded, or they take it for granted, or they're just sort of making their paycheck.
Yeah.
And I don't know what their experiences were and how they got there, as long as they treat people nice.
Yes.
But sometimes when people are just spoiled, and I have no tolerance for that. And I feel sad for them, but I feel mad at them at the same time.
Yeah.
Because there's so many of us out of work right now, and on both sides of the camera. So if you're fortunate enough to have a job, then you should cherish that.
Even from the beginning, it always amazed me how quickly actors complained in the makeup truck, in the chair. Like, because you know they're complaining nonstop when they're not working. I can't believe I can't get a job, I can't get a job, I can't get a job. They're in the chair 2 days.
Oh my God, and then they get there,
2 days,
Yeah.
on day 2, and you would hear them say, you believe they called me in at 8 o'clock yesterday and I didn't get to work till 3? Yeah, I was in my trailer the whole time.
That's a travesty.
I know.
That's outrageous.
I just want to shake them.
Oh my God, I'm getting paid for this. Like, you idiot.
I know.
You know?
I'm not even sure it's a job. I mean, in some way, it can be a noble profession, but you've got to treat it as such, I feel, you know.
And even at the worst of times, you know what I mean? Then again, it does reach a point sometimes where there's a lot of tomfoolery going on the set, and there's just bullshit after 2 o'clock in the morning, and people are really tired, and they should have wrapped, and they're not doing things right. And then you you have a responsibility, I think, to speak up.
Yes.
And
That takes a while to learn, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, because certainly when I was 22, that was not the time to do that. I tried to do that, like, I think it was my second film, and everything was going so wrong. And I was like, why is this happening? And I realized it was not at all my place to open my mouth about it.
Simply
you know?
because you were 22, or you hadn't experienced enough?
Because I was 22, because I didn't have enough experience, and I didn't really understand what the problems were.
And it was David Lynch's Dune.
No, it was not that one.
What was that like, by the way? Boy, talk about the Big Top Circus.
That was really cool. That was the Big Top Circus. It was my first job out in Hollywood.
Right.
I'd done a couple of things in Chicago. And then Helena Bonham Carter was going to do that role. But she was doing Room with a View. Can you imagine? And it overlapped by about 3 days, and they wouldn't let her out.
Wow.
And so there was this mad scramble to cast someone as the Princess of the Universe.
Right.
So I get this audition, and I thought, well, all they said was it was the Princess of the Universe, and I hadn't read that book.
It's a little vague.
And so I wore...
I mean, you could make the argument that
man.
George Michael is the princess of the universe.
I know.
You could. Fair
You
enough.
could. And I wore, he would have loved my outfit, actually, George. I had my hair like pulled back in 2 little pearl barrettes.
Uh-huh.
And then I had a white mini dress that kind of flared out, because this
Hello.
was the 80s, okay?
Sure, let's be clear.
And then I had white lace tights on.
Oh my.
And then I had little, like, white flats. So I didn't do a ZZ Top gal, unfortunately, but, and I had some kind of sparkly thing on my wrist. This was my idea of, well, what, I don't know.
Princess of the
I was thinking,
universe.
it's not, it's sort of Princess Leia, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And they didn't give you anything to read. They gave me something to read, but it was something from Shakespeare. That's all I remember. It
Nothing
was
from
some
the script.
kind of, nothing from the script, because no one was allowed to read it. And they took a Polaroid of me, and apparently David Lynch saw that Polaroid and picked me.
Right.
And
The record does suggest that you were
Yeah.
selected by a Polaroid.
and I think he said I had a classic look in my white dress. But anyway, I got the part, and the great thing about that part was it was essentially my big break.
Yes.
Really, all I had to do was that monologue, and I was really a glorified extra. But it was a 3-picture deal. It was,
Because they tied you up for the sequels? Or-
yeah. They thought they were going to make Star Wars for
Right,
grown-ups.
of course.
And it didn't work out that way. But I got to be in these great scenes. I didn't have too much to do, which is good for a beginner.
Mm-hmm.
And
But how big and elaborate
it was, you know, Sting was running around with just, you know, this gold jock strap and
As he
nothing
does every
on,
night
and,
in my dreams.
Oh my God. And I was just kind of like, hi.
Hi.
And you know, these incredible actors like Patrick Stewart and
wasn't it giant sets and sound
and
stages?
giant sets. I mean, there was a cool thing that David Lynch did. He used to wear the same clothes every day. He had khaki pants, a white shirt, and a navy blazer. Dressed the same way every day.
And do we think he had 7 of each?
He did.
Yeah.
And so we're on the set in this big scene where there was 250 extras in those rubber suits. And I had gotten
And you had a
so
problem with
ill.
5 guys in her mouth. 250 people in rubber suits.
Yeah,
Go
I
on.
was enjoying that. And David stopped everything at one point, and he was pointing to the very back of this enormous soundstage, and he was walking. Everyone froze, kind of like, oh my God, what's happening? And he walked all the way back, and he pointed at this little place on the back wall that had a paint chip that had come out.
Oh my goodness.
And he wanted that fixed. Like, he was that observant of every last detail.
An eye for detail.
And I'd gotten really sick. I was in Mexico City, and you know,
Is that
I
where
was
it shot?
Yes, in the studios there, in Trabusco Studios, and I had some bad food. I had thought it was a good idea to have sushi in Mexico City,
Where else would you go for sushi?
and I got insanely, violently ill. And so I'm in my dressing room, and I had that enormous costume, and I just could not stop vomiting, and I mean, everything basically was happening. And so I just said, do whatever you can do, and the producer said, do whatever you can do, just get her on her feet. And so I remember these I think they were doctors, I don't know, some medical-looking Mexican men with, you know, lab coats, came in with hypodermic needles. And I got 4 different, and I was like, what? Oh! And I got like 4 different injections of, I don't even know what it was.
Hello.
So it stopped me from puking, but I don't know what else it might have done to my DNA. But they basically, I still couldn't get up, but the violence was over.
Right.
And they just sort of stuck a bar stool up under that enormous sort of Elizabethan costume that I had. And so I was just sitting there like this.
Like the Princess of the Universe.
As Princess of the Universe. And I just didn't move, and I was all sweating a lot, and oh, it was awful.
Oh, God.
It was just awful. And
Welcome to the big top.
yeah. And I was like, I was so proud of myself, though. I was like, the show must go on, and I'll do anything to, you know.
And how long
But I
were you-
wasn't late for work.
No.
I was not late for
Didn't
work.
miss a day.
Mm-mm.
That is exceptional.
I did not miss a day.
You were on the picture a while, though. I would think.
Well, I was on. It was weird because I came there, I think 5 or 6 different times.
Right.
Because I was also doing a voiceover. Like in the book, the Princess Irulan is basically, she's telling the story. So I would come in at different periods, and especially after they were done shooting, and I would, you know, record some lines. And so I was watching David like cut the film, and sometimes I was watching them record music, and I watched all this stuff that never ended up in the movie, or I don't think maybe now it's on a director's cut or anything, but I watched all this really, really cool stuff.
What was your take on David Lynch?
Oh, I was really fond of him.
True, original, unique.
Well, he was a real gentleman. You know, he was very...
So well-mannered.
Yeah. He was kind of like...
So well-mannered,
very classy,
he's Canadian.
You know? Yeah, he was very... he was very... And he treated me very well, and, you know, he always wanted to show me what was going on, and especially on my first day when I had to do that monologue. And there were all these words that I didn't understand because they were in the language of these people who lived on this planet. And so it was very, very hard to memorize. And he was so kind and so gentle with me, knowing that this was a first. This was a big, big thing for me.
Yeah.
And just let me take my time, and sat right next to the camera. And, you know, he might as well have been holding my hand, because it felt like that.
Was that his regular thing, to sit next to the camera?
Well, I think then, yeah, we didn't have monitors and stuff, you know, but I felt like he was just very observant and very gentle in what his direction was. Very, very little direction.
I read that you were taken aback at how Alexander Payne sits next to the lens.
Yes.
What an amazing...
Well, what's cool is that, in a sense, Dune was my big break, because
Right.
it got me in a lot of doors,
Sure.
and it was a monologue. And Sideways, of course, really was my big break all those many years ago, and it was a monologue that did that for me.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Alexander was really very, very into the actor's process, and he hates monitors, and so he would sit as close to the actors as he could, as close to the camera as he could while we were shooting.
Yeah, you were saying about Lynch, back in the day, before him, of course, there was never a choice but to sit next to the camera. And I remember hearing that John Huston, you'd sit next to the camera and close his eyes.
Oh.
And just by listening to the music of the dialogue.
Well, I'm sure that was probably a better script. Nowadays, you want to close your ears sometimes with the material you get.
Well, let's jump around a bit then. Your mom, when you're 13, says, I've had it with the corporate world, and I'm going to give a go to be an artist,
Yeah.
and you guys are coming with me. Our lives are all going to change. And basically asking you guys to go along with the sort of sacrifice that would be her life's pursuit. I thought as a family that was kind of a magical thing in theory. I don't know what in practice it was like. Was
Well,
everyone...
in practice, it was an adventure. But, you know, my mother was always an exceptional writer and a poet. And this was in the 1970s, where she was working for, in PR for a large real estate corporation downtown Chicago. My parents had split up when I was really little, and so we had a lot of struggles financially anyway, because, you know, now we say it's a single mom, but then she was a divorced woman.
Yeah.
It's terribly
Raising
shameful.
3 kids.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when she reached the glass ceiling, and a lot of times it really wasn't a glass ceiling, it was a cement wall that you hit when you got up to a certain level as a female.
You'll never make $1 more.
Yeah, and you're not going to get that promotion.
Right.
And she got to the point where the job that they were pulling her up for, they brought somebody in and asked her to train him for the job that she had worked for.
Oh boy.
So she had kind of a good reason to leave that world and be disillusioned by it. And she said, I'm going to do this, but I want you guys to know that, you know, we struggle, you know, with money. And, you know, our dad helped us, but he was a fireman. It's not like, you know, we had a lot of big paychecks coming into our apartment. And so she said, we're really going to struggle a lot more, but I want to do this, and I believe I can. And I was really proud because I knew I wanted to be an actress. And so there was my mother following her dream.
Yeah.
And
Made you closer, I would think.
oh yeah, and it made me really proud.
And what a hero for you as a role
Yeah.
model,
Yeah.
I would think.
So I was down. My sister was already out of the house, and she was already into her own life, and my brother was still at home. And so it was kind of, once Michael moved out, it was really the two of us against the world. And that was, you know, and after high school, and oh, we really struggled. We really, really struggled. And, but she always managed to make it feel like it was worth it.
Right.
That
Sacrifice meant something.
yeah, I mean, we may have, like, do you remember when they had generic food?
Well,
And generic was
they-
this black and white box and stuff.
Yes.
And she was a really good cook, and we would get the cheapest food, but she would,
There's a white can with black lettering saying
Yes.
macaroni.
and she would doctor it, and she would make some, and she'd present it in a beautiful way and have candles, you know, when I came home from acting school or whatever. And so everything, she had a way of making things romantic and making things a celebration, like, you know.
Dramatic.
Yeah, and like I made some extra dough today, so look what we have, and you know, or well, we might get kicked out next month, so let's enjoy this while we're here, kind of thing. And it was very, it just was very uplifting, you know, and in the worst of times.
And then what an amazing Hakuna Matata, if you will,
If you,
when you produced the documentary a couple of years ago.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that sounded pretty amazing in terms of working.
Well, my mother, like you said, had won an Emmy for a documentary called Better Than It Has to Be, and it was about filmmaking in Chicago. And which at the time, I mean, there was a lot of filmmaking coming there. You know, like we all know the Blues Brothers and Ferris
John
Bueller's and
Hughes.
John Hughes,
Right.
and so she was kind of making this sort of poetic look at what it was, what filmmakers are like there. And so cut to this many years later, and I wanted her to direct this documentary. And she's the inspiration for it. And I'll go back a little bit, because I was doing this movie, and, you know, as usual, asked my mom to come and visit. And when my mom visits, she kind of arrives, you know, and she was just fabulous. And she, you know, and the guys are like, wow, look at the mom's really good looking. Okay, you know. And, you know, you guys, you know you do that. Like, you check out how the mom looks to see where I'm going, you know. And she's off talking to everybody.
Honey, that
and,
means you're going to be a
you know,
small Asian man. Because everyone in your family.
I know. And by the way, you keep misquoting Lion King. Hakuna Matata means no worries. You mean circle of life.
What's the circle of life one?
Circle of life is just circle of
Circle
life.
of life.
Hakuna Matata means no worries?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm so lame.
You've been making an
rest of your
ass
day.
out of yourself.
Yeah,
I'm
it's you know,
Homer
hang
Simpson
loose.
strikes again.
Hakuna Matata means no worries.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's important to learn something every week, and I do from the children.
And then the
Indeed.
one, what's the one from Book of Mormon that's fuck
Oh,
you God?
Oh, I want to see
Emily.
that.
Emily would know. what she said.
Yeah. Have him say it to Dr. Chen and let him pass it forward. You have to
Dr.
say it.
Chen is my gynecologist, by the way, so every time you say that, I'm like,
Congratulations!
Wow!
That's great.
no, not this time.
You buried the lead. Been here
Well, it's
129
cats out
shows
of the
and
bag,
never
so to
mentioned it.
speak.
Never mentioned it.
Oh, Virginia's coming? I wonder why you got all nervous when I told you that she was a guest this week.
You know.
You're Dr. Chen, you're a gynecologist. That's, so Chinese herbs is a different thing. So you're working on the documentary with your mom, and you wanted her to direct this.
Oh, anyway, so the thing is I sort of have always wondered why my mother, in her 70s, she just turned 80, just got married, why my mother's always been so youthful. You know, when I was growing up, you know, she had a big party when she turned 40, and she had all 40 candles on the cake, and she was the only mom I knew that not only talked about her age, celebrated it. And so as she got older, she just seemed to get better, and I realized that my sister and I had been raised without a fear of aging and what happens to us. And I wanted to explore that, like what makes a woman like that? What makes her...
Flies in the face of most...
Yeah, what makes her celebrate that when other women are doing these things, and or just at a time when the world wants you to go away and get old. And these women defiantly not only don't do that, but they still work, they are still having great sex, they're still... And I was like, what is it? And obviously she'd be the only one to direct it.
Right.
And it explores, and it's not a film that talks about how to stay young. It's about how to be old. And I think many times in the media, this is a conversation that women we're all having this conversation with each other. But in the mainstream, what you will see is how to stay young. Not youthful, but how to stay young, how to stay looking 25.
Yeah, yeah.
And God, I was so glad when I turned 30. There's no way that I'd want to be 25 again. That was an awful period in my life. And, you know, like for instance, there was, Oprah had a show where there were all these women in their 60s and 70s. And they, you know, had the Oprah hair and makeup, and they were extraordinary, and they were really, really young looking. And it was all about what they're doing to stay thin after menopause, what they're doing to, you know, keep their face looking this way, and all this boob lifts and all this stuff that, I'm not against the boob lift, I have to say, I don't need one yet, but it wasn't about how to be old. And most women, most of us, if we're lucky, we're going to get old.
Yeah.
If we're lucky. And most of us are not going to grow old looking like that fabulous, like Diane Carroll. I mean, bless her heart, she looks amazing. But
Also, who the fuck wants the pressure?
I know. And I'm in an industry where it is mostly about physically how we look.
Right.
For women and men.
And yet, the rolling sideways, where you're allowed to be real and natural, and
that was what got me the most attention.
And less makeup, or according to you, none, ends up being the greatest star turn ever. It's so ironic.
Yeah, and that
but you're
one
right.
was...
All the agents and managers and publicists are about, oh, honey, you got to get back to the gym.
Well, the gym, yes.
I've read. That's a different thing for you.
Yeah.
You thrived there. You actually found...
Look, I don't like lifting weights and like that kind of routine. I did that for a long, long time, but now my whole thing is yoga. And whether it's going out for a walk, or, you know, walking on the beach, or taking a hike, whatever it is that you do, you have to do something starting after 30. And because if you look at yourself after 30, you got to say, well, what kind of 50-year-old do you want to be?
Right.
I just had my 50th birthday, and I asked myself that question when I was 35. I was like, I want to be this way when I'm 50, and I achieved that. Now I'm asking myself, how do I want to feel when I'm 68? Do I want to be sick? Do I want to have, you know, my bones hurting? Do I want to have injuries? No, I want to be vibrant and strong and lean, and so this is your real life insurance.
Yeah.
And
boy, is it.
Yeah.
And yet, when you try to do your own stunts while working with Harrison Ford...
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Paul Bettany totally threw me across the room. That really hurts.
First of all, we have a unnaturally devoted fan of Harrison Ford here in the room.
He's the sexiest thing ever.
Yeah.
Still.
Wait a second. Sexier even than Harold Ramis from 1981?
Oh my God! Listen, this is like apples and oranges here.
You know, yeah. Harrison Ford is an exceptionally handsome man. He's not just good looking. He's
Indiana
handsome.
Jones is the sexiest fictional character ever.
Bar none. But
Then he goes bankrupt.
But now in his 60s, it's still absurd, right?
Yeah.
It's absurd.
I
Except
was
for that
having
earring.
this-
Earring's got to go.
I
Get that
know.
earring. What's up with that earring?
No, but you know, he's
it's
like
him.
he's kind of a stoner dude, I think. I never saw that. I'm not saying. I said I just mean in personality type.
Yeah.
We glossed
But
over something before.
the earring went with it.
And I just want to come back to it ever so briefly.
Sure, Sammy.
Did you say you just turned 50?
I know, it really
Yeah.
is. That's insane.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. I refuse to believe it. I didn't want to make too
I
big a
literally
deal
did
out
a
of it.
double take over here.
I know, and I'm not supposed to say that in public, I guess.
You got it from
You
your
look-
mom.
Yeah.
Absolutely sensational.
I hope I look.
And I don't have
Thank
to say
you.
it.
Good.
Thank
When I'm
you.
50.
Me too. I'll be dead.
I'll be dead. I'm trying to figure out who you sounded like just then. I'll be dead.
I'll be dead.
You sounded like Betty Davis.
Thank you. I did. I'll be dead. Wow. Yeah. So yeah. I bought my last truck at Harrison Ford. Every time Letterman says that,
Every time
it makes
that
me
joke
laugh
kills
so
every
fucking
time.
hard. But you know, one of the sort of earned subplots of your wonderful work in Sideways is the opportunities that come afterwards. You know, when we're allowed to ring the bell at a certain level, everyone else goes, "Oh, why don't I have her? Why wasn't she in my film?" And that's rarefied air for those of us in the trenches. And I'm wondering, was it all just a celebration, or was it don't give me too much now and get me used to this rarefied air? Was there any of that trepidation, or was it just live in it, breathe it, own it,
Oh, live in
enjoy
it, breathe
every
it.
nanosecond?
Enjoy every nanosecond.
Yeah.
Because you also have to remember that in my category, I mean, right now, there's very little work for women of all ages. And so if there's, like, there was a role that I really wanted in a movie maybe about 6-7 months ago, and the part went to Queen Latifah. I was up against Queen Latifah.
Of course you were.
So
I was thinking that just now sitting
they
here.
have, you know, also an amazing actress. And can you imagine everyone who was in between us and surrounding us that was also up for the role? Everyone.
Well, I can't imagine
So-
the names you must have heard.
Oh, yeah.
For
And
Sideways.
so I was, you know, and I was happy for her because we're all trying to get work. But
Right.
but for every role now, you'll very rarely will you see the female written as whatever age or race or type she is. Because for any female role, there's going to be women from 30 to 55 that are going to be up for that role.
Yeah.
And basically those filmmakers can choose whoever they want to put up there.
The competition is insane.
And it's insane because there's not a lot of work for us.
In fact, the
So
Sideways.
I was grateful for, you know, I did see the need to choose very carefully
Right.
after Sideways because before that I didn't.
Well, because we're workers.
Yeah.
We work.
I like to work.
Yeah, and not only that, you know, I love when people come to me and say, they mention a movie, and they'll say, "Why would you do that?" And I said,
That's so rude.
"I know. Well, they, I don't know.
God, that's so, yeah. Well,
I don't know
some
what
of
they're
my
after in
movies are
terms
real
of an answer,
stinkers, man.
but I don't know what they're after in terms of an answer. Do they want me
Yeah.
to just apologize and give them $9? What do these people want? So, anyways, I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I work in a bakery." I said, "You ever make a shitty cake? Does that ever happen?" So just all the best efforts put forward to make another great cake, and it just didn't turn out. Never happened.
Oh, that's good.
David Cross,
Yeah.
a couple years ago, got some guff from another comic, who I won't say, about being in Alvin and the Chipmunks 2, I think. And he's, what are you doing in that? Why would you be in that piece of crap? To which David Cross replied, I wanted to put a down payment on a house upstate, but oddly enough, they wouldn't accept indie cred.
See, that's...
Yeah, we're not allowed to make a living. We're only allowed to do what people want to see.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
because also there's a little bit of snobbery, I think, in the acting community when, like, if I ever get a chance to speak to acting classes or a young actors group, or asked to go to university, and I always grab that opportunity because I love being able to share my experience. And
Sure.
and one of the things that I think is important to say to young artists is sometimes you have to pay the rent, and there's no shame in that.
Can't be.
I mean, I might not advise you to do porn, but it's a living, you know, but
To some
there's no
people-
shame in when you need to have that job.
Right.
And like I was doing a play, and it was the last play I ever did, and not because of this story, but I was doing a play in LA, and there were these theater actors who were doing the play with me, and they were just frowning upon this movie that was out and that performance, and you know, and I was this, you know, I was the ingenue. I was the 22, 25-year-old in the play, and I got this offer for a terrible movie, a really terrible movie, but I was trying to do a kids film because all my movies were very grown up, and sometimes I was.
Candyman's not a kids film?
No, this was way before Candyman.
No, it's not a kids film, though, my question?
No, I
Candyman?
don't think it is. No,
I saw the title Candyman. I just assumed it was for kids.
no, that's a different
Candy?
Candyman.
Candyman.
He can.
Huh? So you got so it was a kids film.
I apologize.
So it was a cutesy kids film? Is that what was the complaint?
Well, I because my movies were always so grown up and so dark in nature at that period in my career, my sister had 3 little kids who could never see their Auntie Gina in a movie. So I told my agents to please find me a children's film, and they found me this movie called Hot to Trot, which was about a talking horse with
Bobcat
Bobcat.
Goldthwait. And the voice of the talking horse?
John Candy.
The late, great John Candy.
John Candy, yeah. So
Danny Elfman scored that movie. by
I
the
know
way.
it was Steve Tisch produced. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like it was.
Everything
you know,
was
it
lined
was a
up for that to
studio
be a good
film.
kids movie.
Who gave you shit about Hot to Trot? I won't have it.
Oh, well, afterwards, a lot of people did. But at that moment, when I got the offer, and I was like so happy to get this offer, and they were so snobby to me, and they were just like, and it's about what again? Oh,
The
okay,
horse
well,
talks.
You know,
How
have you ever
quaint.
thought about maybe finally taking the plunge and going to New York? And I was like, taking the plunge,
Thank
you know. But you know what? There was a part of me that knew that anybody in this snobby cast would have taken this job for a song,
Yes.
just so they could get into the movies. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So we should be more supportive of each other as actors.
Yeah.
But anyway, whatever you can do sometimes to get a job, you need to do that.
Yeah, we should be allowed to work.
When you can afford to be choosy,
Then that's
yeah.
the time.
I think another important thing, though, is to not live beyond your means. Because once you do start working, most actors are pretty bad figuring out how to deal with money. And so we look at a contract and says, oh, I'm going to make $50,000. Well, no, you're going to make a fraction of that. But it's like, oh, I'm going to get a house now, or I'm going to get that BMW now, and it's
You're going to get to keep around 17,000.
yeah. And so it's
And it may have to last for a while.
it may have to last. You may not work for another year.
Right.
So it's important to, like, you know, keep your overhead low so that you can say no to things that really are crappy.
Right.
But if you have to do that one and do it proudly. Do it, you know, hold your head up.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, I am in this sci-fi moment. All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Magic time.
Yes.
You know?
It has to be.
Still keep that with you.
It has to be. So when these opportunities are coming after Sideways, the deal is you had an opportunity to be careful, but what did, even then there's no correct path for any of this. You know, it's just the path we choose.
Yeah.
And these amazing opportunities, like working with Harrison or Jim Carrey, and it's just fun at some point, right? I mean,
It should be fun.
yeah,
I mean, we're making movies.
I know,
You know, we're making TV shows. We're telling stories. We're playing dress up.
yeah.
That's what I do for a living.
You were
I play
children in
dress
the
up.
sandbox, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get toys in the sandbox. Sometimes it rains, and we'll make mud pies.
And you need an umbrella.
Yeah. And
Perpetually.
you know, so you just do, you know,
Jim
follow-
Carrey on 23. Let's talk about that a little bit, because that was a pretty intense screenplay.
Yeah. But it
And-
was funny. I mean, it was funny because show wasn't funny, but I mean, it was funny because everybody got to play two parts. So we got to play our happy selves and then the dark people, what Jim and I called the dark people.
Mustache Monday.
Mustache. We should have had that on that show.
Yeah.
He would have liked that.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful experience working with him. And Joel Schumacher was directing, who I'd known since the 80s, and you know, I auditioned for him for like every one of his movies, and now I was finally working with him, and it was really, it was. I think I had a different experience working with Jim because he was, I think that when he does comedy, it's more of a science, and I know he's known to do like many multiple takes, and but when I worked with Jim, he did like 1 or 2 takes, and he completely put himself in Joel's hands. So, and we were not looking at playback. We were completely, you know, the monitor sat over in the corner, and we just played. And the thing I really liked about Jim was that he was really funny. A lot of times when someone's known as a comedian, they're not funny in real life.
Right.
They're dark,
Yeah.
you know,
Or just shy.
like you, for instance. You know, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I am so dark.
Hilarious
No.
in real life, very dark on stage.
I think boring is the word we're looking for.
No, but you know, it's like
Yeah.
that's the difference between a comic
No,
and an
he's
actor.
genuinely funny and unbelievably sweet, and thankfully Canadian, so he's
Yeah.
got very well mannered
Yeah,
as well.
and very much an actor on that film.
I think he's an amazing actor, and I hope he gets more opportunities. We like to invite our live audience to ask questions. Would you mind fielding one from our live viewers?
excellent.
This one is coming to us from Craig in Massachusetts. There was a rumor about Virginia Madsen producing a remake of the movie Electric Dreams through her production company, Title IX Productions. Any truth to this? If so, what's the status?
Yes, I optioned it. This was the first leading role that I played, and
As a youngster, you started
as
this
a
thing.
youngster, and it was kind of a Cyrano story. If you've never heard it, it's
It was sort of experimental.
it's a
and
boy and a girl and a computer, and the computer helps the nerdy boy romance the girl, and then the computer falls in love with the girl too.
And it was kind of the first of its kind. It was before
It was.
War Games. It was before,
It was no, it was
or was it?
it was
after?
right after War Games.
That's what it was.
But it was, most people didn't have PCs or home computers.
Right, War Games. Of course, it's a wall of
Yeah. It's a
government-owned
giant,
computer.
you know,
yeah.
monstrous machine. But this was about a regular computer that sort of gains intelligence. And it begins to dream, and it begins to fall in love. And
With you.
with me. And it learns to play music with me because I'm a cellist in the film. And I thought, well, gosh, you know, the only technology we had back then was when the computer was trying to learn intelligence, it went into television because they didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
And the only thing it could do when it got mad at the boy was to mess up his beeper and cancel his credit cards.
Imagine what I could do now.
Imagine what it could do now. So I thought, my God, you know, with the music, and this was one of those movies that was wall-to-wall music, like Flashdance, and if a computer gained intelligence, there's a lot of debates about artificial intelligence and when it's going to expand and when it's going to happen. I think it's already happening.
When the cyborgs from Skynet.
It's Eve gets on me all the time because I keep my CDs around. She says, "Why don't you just transfer them to online to a hard drive and keep that?" And I said, "When the machines take over,
There
your
won't be
hard
any
drives will
music.
be useless."
There won't be any music.
And
You'll
I'll
be
still
thrilled.
have this
You'll
CD.
be thrilled to have a Discman and a collection of CDs.
But everyone's going to be banging on your door. Sam, let us watch a movie.
No, you're all locked out. Because you all got on my case. about the wall of DVDs.
And you
And you'll-
downloaded all your
Put it on
shit.
your case.
No,
You'll have
I
your
agree.
boom box.
I do.
and
I
your-
got my boombox. I'm ready to go.
We have this debate in the house all the time. It's like, should we be doing digitally? Should we be doing hard copy? I know. We have this debate all the time.
IBM Watson. Do you know about on Jeopardy?
Yeah.
That was fascinating to watch the computer think.
Well, the first time I remember seeing something like this was when, was it Big Blue? Was it the computer that played the chess player?
Oh
And-
yeah, Kasparov, I think,
Yeah,
right?
that was fascinating.
Yeah.
So I think it's.
I think we needn't look any further than this sentence. Open the Bombay doors, Hal.
Pod
Exactly.
Pod days. Yeah.
Open the
Yeah.
Bombay doors.
You're the worst.
Yes, I am. Stop being surprised
Yeah, but
by
I
this.
went there. See, I went right with him. I didn't want to say anything.
So we're allowed to.
When you're around, quote, perfectionists,
Perfection. There's a difference between Pod Bay and Bombay.
Bombay.
It's not like you didn't mix it up a little bit.
I didn't mean Bombay, India. All right.
But I got it though. I got
Yes.
it.
So, I mean,
So that was. I just thought that this movie, were it to be made today, with today's technology, and not only what the computer
Yeah.
could do to dream,
Right.
but if a computer got mad at you, what could it really do to you? And that is, terrifying.
Mm.
And so, because of how much of our lives are run by our technology now.
Yeah.
So I got the option, which had reverted all the way back to the original writer named Rusty Lemmerad, and a negotiated deal, and I optioned it over and over again. I tried to, I got a treatment, and I went with a writer, and we did a pitch, and it was, and nobody picked it up.
That's
so,
bizarre. What
and
a
so after
natural-
years, I was like, I'm not going to pay for it anymore. So, hopefully, if somebody out there wants to spend the money and pick up a new option, then,
it seems like
I think it would make an excellent project. But
seems like a no-brainer.
I thought so too.
Yeah. So what else is happening with your production company?
Well, I've got a book called The Bitch Posse, which I optioned, and that one is going very well. I have a writer, and I'm developing this with Catherine Hardwick, and very excited about
That's
that
pretty
one.
fantastic.
And it's about 3 very, very bad girls in high school, and who do something very, very bad and have to sort of deal with the ramifications of it when they're, 10 years older. And the movie goes back and forth between them now, and it's a little bit of Heather's, and it's I'm
And
very
bad girls,
excited.
mean girls.
No, they're not mean girls. They're the outsiders, and so
Ooh.
we will. It's sort of,
Was this
if
a
it
book?
goes the way I want it to go, it could be Tarantino in high school.
Whoa.
So it's dark. It's a dark piece, but it's going to be kick-ass, I think.
Was it a book?
Yeah, I optioned that first, and then and just kind of it takes so long to get anything produced, and I've got 2 other scripts that writers are working on now too, and one we have a tentative deal with an actor, and so everything's moving ahead, and I'm told that I've accomplished a lot in 2 years, but I'm not on the set yet.
Right.
So
Yeah.
then I'll feel like I'm actually producing if I'm on the set.
Yeah. That's. Sometimes I get to the point where I say, I don't believe this project is real till I'm at the premiere.
That's yeah.
I want. You got a chance to work with some pretty amazing people, so forgive my curiosity. It's so genuine. But Robert Mitchum was a very early hero of mine in terms of
Mine too.
a rebel within the system who rose to superstardom despite his renegade.
Well, he was. I hate when people use the word icon nowadays, but he was the kind of actor that reached an iconic status.
Yeah.
Like a John Huston, like Lauren Bacall, like Betty Davis, like Gary Cooper. I mean,
Oh no, he was one of them for sure.
the actors from those days, that.
He also
that-
had this bad boy thing with the.
Yeah. Well,
know.
he was a bad boy, but he was, to me, he was one of the most handsome men that I'd ever laid eyes on as a little girl, and he reminded me of my dad.
Wow.
He sounded similar to my dad, and he's very tall, and he had this barrel chest, and this was, I took a kind of a left turn in my career because I had done like 3 studio pictures in a row, and I was still in my 20s, and I got offered a huge amount of money that to this day I have not made this kind of money on a movie. And it was for another studio picture or for this TV movie of the week with Robert Mitchum.
No brainer.
No brainer to me. I mean, I just, you know, when you're young and romantic, and
Yeah.
it was about William Randolph Hearst and Marion Davies, and I lived on Davies Way, and I lived below this house that this was her property.
Right.
That she used to own, and I was like, it's meant to be. And I
Yeah.
knew Marion Davies' story, and I was a fan, so. But
That's
mostly, I
extraordinary.
mean, I've done movies sometimes just to go work with a certain actor, or
Oh,
just
yeah.
so I could go on a certain location, you know?
Absolutely.
I fully admit.
Well, these are life adventures. My goodness.
And so the first time I encountered him, actually, it's a wonderful story. How old was I? 23, maybe 22. And I am asked to come down to Mr. Mitchum's suite to meet him before the movie. And he's having a wardrobe fitting, come down, and then you can meet the wardrobe costume lady and all that stuff.
Is
So
this on a lot somewhere?
No, it was in a hotel.
Okay.
And, you know, and everyone in the production was at the hotel up in Vancouver, in Toronto.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to breathe, and I'm walking down the hall. I kept stopping, and then I can hear his voice. I can hear that huge Mitchum voice, you know, from down the hall. And I'm
The hell's the matter with you people over there? Yeah.
God. And then I hear him laughing, and this big booming laugh, and so I get to the door, and I stand outside, and it's sort of just slightly ajar. And I stood out for a while, hearing him talk and laugh, and so then I said, well, the door's open, so I knocked on the door, and I sort of, no one answered, and I sort of pushed the door open, and there was Robert Mitchum in boxer shorts and nothing more.
Hello.
And he turned and just kind of went, he just turned and just went, hey. And I was like, oh, whoo! And I just felt like the heat, you know, I
Yeah.
just went, I must have blushed. I mean, I'm probably blushing right now. And he was so, because I think he was 63, 64, and I was, you know, 23, 24.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in really great shape, and he looked really good without his clothes on. And I was like, oh, Mr. Mitchum. You know, and he was like, oh, come on in. And then he was like, oh, and he pretended as though, oh, I better put my robe on. And I think he did the whole thing on purpose.
Wow.
I think he
Send
did
her to
the
my
whole-
suite,
Yes.
Johnny.
I think, and in
Get me
fact,
out of these
yeah.
clothes, quick.
So he was having a wardrobe fitting, and at the end there was some beautiful wardrobe in the movie that I loved so much, and everything was rented because it was
Period.
period costume, and it was this beautiful sort of something Marion Davies would have never worn. It was this beautiful negligee with this long green robe trimmed in marabou, and I loved it. And he said I just looked like Barbara Stanwyck when I wore it, and I was like,
Goodness.
you know. And then when I was at that age, and I, you know, I had my hair dyed very, very blonde, and a lot of people were comparing me with Marilyn, and I thought, oh, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be. I mean, and I loved Marilyn, but
You wanted to be Barbara Stanwyck.
I wanted to be Barbara Stanwyck because Marilyn was so victimized and in many senses allowed herself to be that. And I was strong from Chicago.
Yeah.
So at the end of the movie, I was crying. I was so sad it was over. And I went back alone to my hotel room. And in the closet was that robe and that negligee.
What?
And it was just there, yeah, with a little bottle of perfume.
Aww.
And he did that for me. I still have it.
You
It was
better
very-
still have
yeah,
it.
Yeah, it was very cool. I don't know how he did it, but it just arrived without a card or a note or anything.
I'm guessing you wept just a little?
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
spectacular.
It was, well, he was that kind of man, you know.
Yeah.
He was a man's man.
Oh boy.
As
The
my dad
original
would say.
Max Cady, is that the character's name? I'm sure I'm bastardizing this as well. Cape Fear.
Oh yeah.
He was the character that De Niro did in the remake.
Yeah.
Or that one with love hate, and you
Yeah.
know, he could be.
Katie
he was
or
one of the
Katie?
few guys
Yeah.
who could
I
cross
couldn't-
over. He could do the ultimate bad guy or the ultimate hero.
Yeah.
You know, he was a real.
And a pot smoker. That was part of his infamy in the smoking pot in the 50s.
How dare he?
Loved every square inch of that man. He said most sincerely, you know, I've got to ask, I'm sorry, but you spent a little time with Christopher Walken on The Prophecy, and, you know, I've got a little unnatural affection towards him.
Oh, so do I.
Yeah.
He was, he was. I was fortunate, though, because I met him. Oh, indeed, my friend. Yes, it's not really water we're drinking here.
What the hell is happening?
This is a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, which is my favorite kind of wine at this moment.
We're going to talk about, because I imagine your education blossomed considerably well.
It did.
I mean, how does it not?
You
How does
got
it
enough?
not?
You got more than that?
Yeah, get over here,
All
Sam.
right, I'm
Yeah,
just
come
gonna
on, have
just take a
some.
quick. There was a.
I brought a couple bottles.
Hey,
so-
oh, that's fantastic.
Nice ass, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much.
On the shot
Thank you.
there.
Thank you. All right.
So go ahead, please.
Oh, Walken.
Prophecy.
Okay, so I'd met him about 7 months before we did The Prophecy. We were going to do this other movie that never got made because Val Kilmer dropped out about 4 days before we were going to go shoot. So all the financing dried up, and it was this beautiful movie. So I'd spent some time with him, and he was just wonderful. And I had a young niece, a little 13-year-old niece who had been diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, and she was very self-conscious, and he took us out to dinner and treated her like he told her she was like a princess. And he was so wonderful to her that I just, you know, I think you've said this before, like sometimes when you meet people and it turns out to be an awful version of what you hoped they would be. Yeah. And he was
Beyond.
the way I hoped he would be.
Right.
With those beautiful blue eyes, and he was just such a poetic, sweet man. And cut to when we get to The Prophecy, and he was now, I think, pretty sure he was in character. And he played this fallen angel, Gabriel.
Considerably darker.
Yes, and I think he was telling me that he was going to sort of play this like the undead, like a vampire, and that he wanted people to be repulsed by, you know, the evil energy around him. So he was eating a lot of raw garlic.
That's what I had heard.
Did you? Yeah, I think a lot of, and it was so repulsive. It was terrible, and it was terrible.
Was it terrible for the reasons he wanted?
Well,
or had he miscalculated?
You know, like no one was quite sure whether,
The hell is
you know,
that?
when someone has really bad breath and kind of no one, you know, it's that big lead actor and nobody wants to say anything, when you really should, you know, which I make a habit of doing that on sets. If people are smelly, I often tell them they are and stop doing that. And I do it rather pointedly as well. So I told the producer, I said, we can't take it anymore. It's really bad. And I'm going to ask him, I'm sure there's a reason. I bet it's a character thing. Why doesn't somebody tell him to stop eating the garlic? I'm like, oh, Virginia, you can't do that. Please don't say anything about it. And I was like, I'm going to say something. Producer was like, you can't do that. You'll upset him. And I said, yeah, you know, it's a ridiculous thing. So I was forbidden to say anything about the garlic. And it was so, I'm telling you, you couldn't stand this close to him.
Wow.
People were just going like, oh, they'd walk away and feel like retching. That's how bad it was. And then some days it wasn't quite so bad.
Huh.
So it was something, anyway, so we get in a car, somehow we end up all being in a car on our way home. And I said, if I'm getting in that car with Chris, I'm going to ask him about the garlic. Oh, don't! So we're in the car, and the producer's sitting, and then I'm just waiting. And the producer's looking at me, and I'm looking. And I go, so Chris, yes, Virginia. So what's up with the garlic, man? And the producer, like this, I mean, I swear to God, his whole body went rigid.
Of course.
And he goes, oh, yes, I eat a lot. And I said, no, but it stinks, Chris. It's really, really smelly. And I just think you should know it's very, very, and he goes, oh, yes, it's very strong. And I go, yes, it's really strong, but it's kind of freaking everyone out. And And I'm just curious, like, is it a character thing, or like, why do you do it? Why do you eat raw, whole cloves of garlic all the time? And he kind of like leaned forward, because I was in the front seat. He kind of leaned and he goes, well, you see, and I can't do his voice.
It's okay.
But he goes, you see, Virginia, I've done a lot of bad things.
Wow.
And that was his reason. I said, oh, so it's a health thing. So you're trying to purify your blood or something. And he goes, so it seems. And I go, well, so what if you and I were like doing a love scene? You know, would you eat the garlic? And he goes, in that case, I would abstain.
I'm going to suggest a blood transfusion before you create a 2-mile radius of stink. Wow.
Yeah, it
That's
was,
pretty
and
spectacular.
he's a gourmet chef.
Yeah.
So a couple of times I went to his room with Elias and friends, and he would cook the most extraordinary fish. And he would cook amazing food, anything, and just beautifully presented, and
Literally a gourmet chef.
literally a gourmet
Not
chef.
just a
yeah.
foodie.
No, he really knew how to do it.
Apparently he's pitched a cooking show to the Food Network, and those morons passed. I can't imagine that not being the highest rated
Well,
television in history.
because
pull our
the
money.
Food Network refuses to do
Celebrity.
they only want experts.
Right.
But Brian Boitano had a cooking show on there, so I mean, come on.
But you're saying he's actually a gourmet chef.
He is.
Yeah, so he doesn't
So
know the
now
rest
there's
of
a
it.
new one, which is, I think, the Food Channel.
Oh, there's a spinoff.
There's another one that now, because Debbie Mazur has an amazing cooking show with her chef husband, and they're both extraordinary, and that's a thing online that I found. And it's amazing. Like, they really should have their own cooking show. So they made one online, and now they're going to have one on TV.
Nice.
And so hopefully, but wouldn't that be whimsical?
Oh my God.
It would. Oh, okay. There was one we were in his hotel room, and we were having, we were enjoying ourselves, the group of us, and okay, we were really stoned, and so there was no food. The only thing that was in his refrigerator was a fish that was kind of dressed and ready to be baked, just a single fish, and that was all that was in the fridge. And that's what he was going to prepare for himself, I guess. The night. So he went to the store,
Right.
which was across the street, so you could just walk to the grocery store. And he knew exactly what he was going to get. So we were like, oh my God, Chris is going to cook for us. Whoa. We all had the munchies. And so he like an hour and a half goes by.
Oh my God.
And he's just not there. And I'm like,
Oh my God.
and I'm like, you guys, somebody has to go find him.
And when you're stoned, that's like 5 hours.
No, because we were starting to get really super paranoid now.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, where is he?
Did someone kill Chris on the way across the
Yeah,
street?
because, or did, you know, like, somebody bust him? I mean, it's like, no, he's not carrying anything. He's not doing that. So somebody goes out, and they find him, and he was apparently with the groceries, just standing on the road, just staring down cars. And they said, Chris. And he was like, what? And he's like, come back to the kitchen. And he was like, oh, I was enjoying looking at them. Because people were frightened of him. Because he had this really, really black hair and very, very white skin.
For the movie.
So he must have looked really scary at night standing there with a bag of groceries like by a tree. So he comes back in, and he's so excited, and so we're like, what did you get? And he goes, and he pulls out this thing of chicken legs, and he goes, I've done a whimsical thing.
Oh my God.
It was so, and then, of course, then he made the chicken legs, and I was a vegetarian, and I ate one.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I was a vegan, and I ate one. That's how good
That's
they
a
were.
big sacrifice.
Yeah.
Or incredibly stoned.
Well, like, yeah, well, that too. But I mean, if Chris Walken made you a chicken leg, would you say no?
He could make a sea urchin, and I would say
He
yes.
could make a human leg.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say no.
He could make a Jewish leg, and I'd say yes. Wow. That's pretty great.
Still don't know why the chicken legs were whimsical, but
Yeah.
They were kind of when he got done with them.
I'm going to make the Colonel rise from the dead with my chicken.
Would you please say that? Would you please say I've done a whimsical thing?
I've done
So
a
who wait?
whimsical
wait.
thing.
This is two things. Who would win in a fight? Gus, the chicken man, or Walken and his chicken?
Are you
That's a
watching
tough-
Breaking Bad by
That's
any
a tough
chance?
one.
I haven't
on
yet.
AMC. There's a villain on the show. Carlo, I'm trying to think of the actor's name. I worked with him in Usual Suspects. Esposito, I believe is his last name. Look it up real quick. And he's playing this villain on this show this season who is meticulous and refined and soft-spoken and the most haunting bad guy we've seen in
Oh, cool.
20 years. It's so good, so smart, his choices. So yeah, the Chicken Man is one of his nicknames. And I don't know if you put the Chicken Man up against Walken's character from Prophecy. Giancarlo Esposito, they're telling me from the other room. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, but he's got the garlic on his side.
You can't beat
No
Carlo.
one
You
can
can't
stand
beat-
up to that.
You can't beat Stinky Walken. I'll smell you out. Let's go back to our live audience. They love you so from Facebook. The Keith Rogers. Highlander 2. I read that she went up for the first movie but didn't get the role. The sequel was allegedly out of control production. Are there any good stories?
No. No. Yes. I did audition for the first one. There's some things that you audition for that
Haunt you?
they don't haunt you, but at the time they really hurt
Yeah.
when you didn't get them. Especially if they became like a really big movie and you came close, or I was in second. I was in second or third place on so many of those movies of the 80s that it would be really hard when they'd hit really big and I was off doing some strange made-for-cable movie, and that was, God, when I was so much in the beginning of my career, I think, was the first Highlander. So I didn't get that one, and so when Highlander Dos was made in Argentina, I just did it simply to go to Argentina and to
Sure.
work with Sean Connery. That was my whole reason for doing the movie. It was such a stupid script. It was stupid. But I loved the first one, and I'm a
Argentina
sci-fi.
with Sean Connery?
Right? Like,
Yeah,
that's a
no-
no-brainer. That really is. And I was going to go and live in Buenos Aires for 3 months, and I got extra plane tickets.
I've made something whimsical.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Did Sean Connery cook for you?
And and there was this thing where it would be like on the call sheet, and it would say, you weren't supposed to talk to Christopher about Tarzan, and you were never to mention the B word to Sean Connery.
Bond.
Yes,
Yeah.
no one was allowed to talk to him, and it was this unwritten thing. And like the producers are upset with me, but I said, how can you think that I'm not going to ask him about, Octopussy? How am I not going to ask him about these?
Yeah,
No, you can't do. Oh no, you Virginia, you can't do
And that was Roger Moore also.
Well, I wanted to ask him about the transition. That's why. But that's a different story. But he was my James Bond. Roger Moore is not. So it was that argument that
For the record, Roger Moore should be no one's James Bond.
Well, you're going to get some hate mail for that.
I understand that.
But I wanted to. There were so many things about those movies and technically how they were made, and there's so many things that I wanted to know about. No, you can't. You're not
I'm
allowed.
sure he would have loved
So,
that. You found your quiet moment?
no, that when he first walked on the set, of course, everything begins to change when Signor Connery is on his way, and everything gets really quiet and really tense. People scatter. People are asked to leave the set, and when he arrives, and he's also, like Mitchum, very big man, very tall, barrel-chested, a presence that you can feel before you see he's there.
I would think.
And he's so handsome, and there he is. And he just walks in, and I was like, oh my God, Sean, James Bond, come here. And I ran over, and he started laughing, and oh, the producers were like, oh, they were so mad at me. Oh, they were so, but they were crooks. They were assholes. So
Hey, fuck them.
yeah, and Connery hated them. So it was, so I had a wonderful time with him, and spent some great nights going out to see tango and eating wonderful food. And he was a real gentleman, and just to rub it in, I made a T-shirt that said Jane Moneypenny.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah. It was cool.
At Vermin Burry, because that's a name on the Twitter.
You're so funny that you always say the Twitter.
Yeah.
Do you also say the Facebook and the internets? Mm-hmm. Oh,
And the Jews. Can you guesstimate the quality of your projects before the first day of filming based on the other participants? Interesting.
no.
Yeah, no, it's, you know.
Case in point, Highlander Dos.
I mean, you know, listen, we talked about sometimes we all take jobs because we either like to work, or there's also a part of us, I think, the gypsy nature, which is I may never get a chance to work again. Jimmy Stewart, all the way to the end of his life, thought every time he finished a movie it would be the last time anyone would ever ask him back to the dance. There's this insecurity that they instill in us, no matter how cocky we may appear at times, that makes us start projects that in retrospect one might be able to look back and say, maybe I didn't need to do that. But how many times you read a script, and between the version you read and the film you see, there's 8 million ways to die here, and it's out of our control. It's one of the I thrive doing stand-up because I get to go on stage for an hour and take the audience for a ride of my choosing, you know, and take back the control and not be a
Have
gun
you
for
ever,
hire.
like, back when there was a lot of, I think this was like in the early 90s when there was a lot of little independent movies. Well, they then began to call them independent movies.
No.
Where there were all these movies getting greenlit all over the place. And didn't you find that sometimes it would be easy to get caught up in somebody else's dream?
Yes.
You know, a first-time director who was like, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to rewrite that scene, and
Yeah.
didn't that kind of make you want to sign on sometimes?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, someone else's passion.
And there seemed to be a certain freedom with a lower budget, where you felt like, we all get to be considerably more creative and artistic and so on and so forth, and there's more integrity in those sort of misnomers. And yeah, I think we were under the belief, perhaps false at times, that we were doing special things when in fact they gave a couple $1 million to an idiot.
Yeah, and they still do.
Yeah, oh boy, yes. Yeah, the 90s were an interesting decade of probably more production, maybe only back as far as the 70s, but the 70s and the 90s seem to have that in common, when there was a tremendous amount of independent filmmaking going on. And now, I would say, certainly in your experience with Sideways, I imagine the budget was pretty small on that.
Well, for me, that was a big budget because
Was it?
it was like, I don't know, it was 14, 15 million, and
Yeah, but
that for me was, I was working on everything under 3.
it's all relative. But was there a studio Sideways? There must have been.
That was Fox Searchlight.
Yeah. So for Fox
So-
Searchlight, I guess, but 14 is still, for 2004, is still way below the average.
Yeah, certainly.
I would think so.
And I think what you're saying is very true, that, and it still goes for today, that when there is a lower budget, and it's not so much a corporate thing, of course there's more artistic freedom. And because when you're on the big movie, like say Firewall, for instance, that was the first time I worked on a movie that was like a giant machine. Like, you remember in Star Wars there was that, what were those little creatures that lived on that in the Ewoks?
Oh, the Ewoks.
And they had that
Kevin
big
can tell you a
sand-
lot about the Ewoks.
The big sort of sand Oh my God, that's right.
You are so busted.
Well, you know the big sand crawler.
Yeah.
Yes, you know that. Okay, sorry.
The giant machine.
And I felt like that's kind of like I was one of those on that movie, and it was fascinating because it was.
That studio machine is something.
I really, it was really interesting to observe because the crew was so massive, and it was this giant machine that moved along that was run by all these men in suits, and it was so different from, not that it was not creative, but then when you get onto a film that doesn't have all of that, you know, I don't know, there's a lot of power there and a lot of money. And when that's kind of not around, it is friendlier.
Yeah,
it is more
with all that
creative.
money comes ridiculous overhead and pressure to make the rent.
There's a lot of pressure.
Oh my God.
I think TV feels like that. Network TV feels like that to me.
Yeah.
It's and there you're really meant to feel just you're the hired hand. You're the actor. Stay out of it.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to hear from you. We don't want, you know, and I've tried the network series things now 3 times, and I just found it to be very unpleasant. You know, it was very much felt corporate.
Right.
Felt like there was so much pressure, not necessarily on me, but on those making the shows. There was so much money involved.
Right.
That it was difficult to have a good atmosphere on the set
Yeah.
because of the pressure.
And now with the cable stuff and TV, it seems like that's the version of the independent filmmakers.
Yeah.
A show like Mad Men or Breaking Bad, if they get 1 million viewers, they're doing well.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, obviously that.
And I haven't been on one of those, but I hear that creatively it feels really good, and
Yeah.
actors get to be a part of the process, and so I'm looking now to develop something for me on one of those networks, on cable, because I think I would, now that my son's 17, he's almost done with school, and I could dedicate that kind of time
Yeah.
needed
What a
for
great
a
time.
series.
What a great
If it
time.
was, it's like and I'd like it to be an ensemble,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so I've been reading all kinds of crazy, interesting things, and you know, it hasn't happened yet, but that's where I'd like to go, like in the next couple of years, I think.
Well, it's very important to be as proactive as you're talking about, you know.
It's a hustle, though, isn't it?
It's
Don't
a
you always,
nonstop
like,
hustle, but, you know.
We're always hustling.
Yes.
To get jobs, and you know, when I watch your show, it's like it's the constant through line for any actor is the constant hustle.
Yeah.
It never ends, and you have to have such a thick skin if you're going to go into it. And everybody's stories of early rejection and people not seeing, you know, who they were, what they were capable of. I mean, it's very interesting.
There's such a common thread that I'm feeling like it's a microcosm for, dare I say, real life, which is that our own destinies are in our hands. That is to say, we make life for ourselves. A lot of times we get in our own way, our own insecurities create problems.
Oh, yes.
But life is for the taking. It isn't for the waiting for life to happen. And the rejection that we feel under the microscope of show business, I'm starting to feel like, you know, everyone's going through it on such a universal level, no matter what business they've chosen. There's the job who's keeping you, the boss keeping you down and underappreciating your efforts. And, you know, it's a human condition now, and I feel like the hustle part of it, the aspect of what we do, we're allowed to actually to diversify, which is pretty fucking exceptional and exciting that we can step outside this box that everyone would like to keep us in, be it a character actor or ingenue, what have you, and say, no, I think I'm also going to develop this, I want to do a documentary about this subject, and then that becomes unbelievably exciting because we're creating our own world, and so that's what, you know, one of the things that I admired about what you're doing with your production company was that you're being proactive and you're making things happen.
Well, you have to be.
Yeah.
I think, and I mean, certainly overall, you could say that our life is our own responsibility, and if there's a lot of failure or setbacks in your life, you have to look within. And you can't blame everybody else for what is happening to you or what befalls you in your life.
Right. I also, the other side of that, forgive me, is I wish sometimes people would stop blaming me and then take responsibility for the happiness in their own lives. You know what I mean? So many times in life, I want to say to other people, you know, we're all responsible for our own happiness. Stop
Yeah.
looking for other people to.
And actors are notorious for blaming the industry
Oh, God,
and the
yes.
powers that be and everyone.
making
They
excuses.
just don't get me. And listen, when I had those lean years where I was in terrible debt and I was really pigeonholed and my career was just, you know, I didn't really have much of a career. And, but I did not say, oh, you know, they just don't get me, and, you know, really I had to get off my ass that was sitting on the couch every night eating pizza and watching TV and smoking, you know, a pack of cigarettes and just going, you know, maybe I made it. It's just, it was ridiculous. I had to make major changes in my life that did not involve anyone but me.
Yeah.
Because I figure I have no control over who decides who's going to cast this role. I have no control over their perception of me. If they think I'm old, or they think I'm fat, or they think I'm, you know, I have no control over that. What I do have control over is my product when I walk in the room.
Right.
So it was up to me to sort of look at myself as a corporation, as an entity, like, and figure out, okay, if I'm a factory, like what part of the machinery doesn't work anymore and what part of the staff needs to get fired, and, you know, like take a whole inventory of my entire corporate self and figure out, I definitely need some repackaging. I knew that.
Nothing wrong with repackaging, by the way.
No.
Keep it organic,
Yeah.
if possible.
And so I did. I mean, I started really taking care of myself, and I made a lot of really positive changes in my life in the areas that I could. And then lo and behold, you know, 4 or 5 years later, everyone was like, oh,
She's amazing.
God, we thought she was old and fat.
Well,
And I'm like, no.
let me ask you about those leading up to Sideways. I mean, that had to have been a role that every woman in town wanted.
Yes.
Because, first of all, Alexander Payne is a genius. Election may be a perfect,
it's a perfect film.
a perfect film.
Yeah.
It's absurd how good this guy is. So,
Yeah.
just based on that, who doesn't want to work with this guy? And then, of course, Paul Giamatti is incredible. So, how do you maneuver those waters and get to the head of the class? That's just ridiculous.
Well, first it was a really hard meeting to get.
Yeah, that's...
Because everybody wanted in.
Yeah.
And I had an agent who was my long-suffering agent who was trying he so believed that this part was right for me. And once he had cast Paul Giamatti, and I think he had cast Thomas Hayden Church by this point, this was a movie that had no names in it. So they really wanted to have a name for the girls, and then Sandra was in it from the get-go, so they had to get somebody
With a marketable name.
for my character.
Right.
And Alexander didn't care about that. But when I got the meeting, I thought, well, this character is me. You know, this part is mine until they tell me otherwise. And I was in that frame of mind. And I worked with an acting coach named Aaron Spicer, who I'd been working with for about a year, trying to figure out, like, what was inconsistent with my auditioning process. Like, what was not, I was either really good or okay, you know, but somehow I still wouldn't get the part. But what was it that was inconsistent in my process? So when that material of Sideways came, I was so ready. I worked so hard on that audition. And
But you're saying a factor of this was that Alexander Payne didn't care that people were telling him you have to get a big name.
no, he didn't. And he was willing to wait to
He
make
wanted
the
the
movie.
right actress.
And so I went in, and Aaron went with me to make sure that, like, nothing would distract me. And we worked on all the material, because that part of that scene with Paul, which really isn't a monologue to me, it was a dialogue between, Paul talks about wine, I talk about wine.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want to read that. But they didn't want to put that pressure on actresses. So we get to the door, and the door, I swear to God, outside the casting, the door like exploded practically from its hinges, and a very loud Tom Sizemore came.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, Virginia, how you doing? Oh my God! And I was like, oh, Tommy.
Oh, God.
And I was like,
If anything
"Oh,
can
Tommy."
derail your
Oh my
concentration.
God! And Aaron was like, hey, Tom, and like took him over, and like they were talking, and I was like, I ran in because I had known Tommy for many, many years, and I really, really didn't want to talk to him in that moment. Because he was very loud and very excited
very
and very,
good
very
choice.
sweaty.
Yeah.
And so I went in, and then he came up sometime later, and I was just felt really calm. And so I almost thought I sabotaged myself because I went in, and I'd spent a lot of time in the Santa Ynez Valley before that movie. And I knew how I felt, because that place was a big part of my healing that I went through during those lean years. I had friends there. So I'd go up there and climb trees and go on hikes, and I only went wine tasting like once when I was there. Not that there wasn't wine in the evening, mind you, but it was...
There's tasting and there's drinking.
Yeah, and we were drinking. But it was a very, it was like going to camp for me when I would go up there, and so I knew how I felt, and I said, if I can just bring that in the room, they'll recognize it, they'll know. And so...
Because the character represents the
Yeah.
mentality and the disposition
And she was just like me where I had been
when you're there.
a few years earlier, like in my life. And so I knew her sadness and I knew her isolation, but she was just about to come out of it, I knew where she was. So anyway, so I go in and I read the angry scene, and I read the part where they first meet in the diner, in the hitching post. And I said, I just have to tell you before I leave how much I love this script, and I appreciate you giving me the script because you weren't allowed to take it, it was a big deal. And I said, I just want to tell you that, when Paul talks about wine, this is when she falls in love with him. And when she says, and I sort of started to go into the speech because it's like he had to hear me say that. So I said, when she talks about, and I went into the whole thing about Pinot and when the grapes are growing and it builds in complexity, and I love when she says blah blah blah, and I went on and on till till it finally peaks, and it begins its slow inevitable decline, and they both just kind of, it was just Alexander and the casting director, and they just sort of sat like this, and I said, I just want to say I love that, And so...
Nice going.
And then instead of saying, he went, oh, that was lovely. I think we should have everyone read that speech when they come in. I was like,
No!
and I said, oh, well, and he goes, anyway, thank you very much for coming in, Virginia. I think that was really exceptional, and I think that was just the best we've seen. And I was like, oh, well, thanks, and then you leave, and I thought,
Now everyone's going to get to do the moment.
now everyone's going to go in there with it, like, off
Prepared,
book and
yeah.
whatever. But I was, of course, really, really prepared. I worked really hard on it. I snuck it in there. So
Good going.
then I had to wait like 3 months,
Without callbacks, just waiting.
just waiting,
Holy shit.
because they wanted somebody else, and then the movie went, I think, from somewhere to Fox Searchlight, and then they still didn't call me, and I said,
And the agent's saying, you're still in the hunt.
yeah, we're waiting.
You're on the short list.
Yeah, and I said, why don't they put Paul and I together in a room, because I know I'm going to have chemistry with that man. I know it.
You felt it.
And because he's dreamy, he just has those eyes, and he's such that voice.
It's not the word I
and-
think of.
I do.
I'll be honest
Girls
with you.
do. I'm
Yeah.
telling you.
Yeah.
We would be on the set, and first everyone was like, "Hey, Paul." 2 weeks later, the women were like, "Hey, Paul." It's just he has some masculinity, and he's very. There's something about his voice that is very attractive. And,
Sweet vulnerability as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
So finally, I got a call that he and my agent has this kind of sound in his voice when like something big is about to happen. He's like, "How you doing?" Like, and I go, "Hey, Mike, how's it going?"
He turns into an animated character?
He goes, "So, some good news, but you know, I don't really know yet. But you know, Alexander wants to meet you at the Chateau Merlin. You know, nothing for sure." He just says, and I go, "Well, what does it mean? Does he want me to read or?" "Oh, don't know, but just, you know." So I went in a sweatshirt and I just threw my hair up on top of my head and I didn't wear any makeup because it's kind of how I saw her. And so I'm sitting there with sort of schlumpy, and into the garden walks Sean Penn and somebody else really good looking, but they, you know, they were sitting there having some chat about, you know, script, and I was like, "Hey, Sean," you know, and he was like, "Oh, hey," you know, and I was thinking, "Oh, I look like crap," and so then all of a sudden Alexander Payne walks in, and they're like, "Oh," and probably thinking like, "Why does she look like shit when she's meeting Alexander Payne?"
I have no idea why Martin Mull said show business was high school with money. Yeah. This sounds like high school.
High school with money.
Yeah.
And so it was very satisfying when at that moment he asked me if, I would like to ask you if you would play the role of Maya in my new film Sideways.
Oh, God.
And I just did the huge well up, and I was like, "Yes, I would love to," you know, and it was really, and then I said, "Can I look like this?" And he said, "Oh, I was going to ask you if you would do it without makeup," so it was great. We had the same idea of what I would look like physically, so.
Meeting of the minds, for sure.
Yeah, I cried for a long time when I went home, because those were the kind of roles that I was trying to get, like a really strong cameo or
Well, that was a part
supporting role
was trying to
that
stress
someone would
was-
see what I could really do.
Yeah. It seemed unattainable. It seemed like he would have to. Not only was every actress in town after the part, let's face
Yeah.
it, because again, he's just an amazing storyteller and a wildly successful filmmaker. So when I want so very much for that to be factored into people's consciousness in terms of what it took for this opportunity to come all the way through.
And I think with him, you know, it's one of those rare times where I got that part because I did the best audition. I was the best, and I got the part because of that. It was because of my acting ability that I was cast in that.
Well,
And
there's
that,
no
you
question.
know that that's very rare.
There's no question that it was lightning in the bottle in that regard, and also had to have been an image he had in his mind. You know how it is being on the other side of casting now with a production company, and you get an image in your mind of a character, and you're waiting for someone to come through the door and be that.
Yeah.
There has to be that connection.
I think he told me that when he looked at my headshot, that she looks like she's been through a lot. And I didn't quite know how to take that. But yeah, I had to do it.
It's an ass backwards compliment, but a compliment nonetheless. She has lived, she is wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd seen a lot by
That
time.
character has to be that.
Yeah.
So that's what he needed.
Yeah, because she had a certain amount of sadness in her.
You should stop reading. Clearly, between David Lynch and Alexander Payne, you should just send the photo. You should refuse to meet. Just,
Well,
you know what?
I don't do that.
Yeah, they
Just-
can look at my photo. How much? We like to keep the thing. Are you okay on the Vita?
good. I'm still good on my
We like
Vita.
to keep things playful and light here as well. And now that you've been so unbelievably kind to share,
When are we going to get a scene, though? I know before you move on, when are we going to do something together?
well, I've sent you a script.
Yes, I know. But you want to talk? You want me
We'll
to?
talk
Do you want
about
to
it.
talk about? Because I will talk about how brilliant it is.
Well, that's all.
It's so good.
Then we're going to work together.
How's my part?
It's
Sammy, your part's ridiculous.
it's so good.
You're the-
It's the most amazing
You're the younger.
dialogue.
You're the
It's-
younger chick.
You're such a good writer.
Aw.
You're an exceptional writer.
Well, then.
I was really, it was, because we get so much shit, both of us, and we read, and it's really hard to read things
Yeah,
now
yeah.
because they're so bad
Yeah.
most of the time. And you're like, how did they get financing for this?
Yeah.
And yours is just beautiful.
Isn't it astonishing by page 10 most times you're thinking, how the fuck did they get financing for this?
Yeah. Yeah.
You just can't believe it.
And then you'll either see a family at prayer, and you're like, oh, okay, that's how they got the financing. Or you'll see a girl getting raped,
Right.
or with, her tits showing, and
Right.
that they got some financing. They got a couple $1 million for that scene.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's always something extreme on one end or the other that why they get their financing.
Yeah.
And some of that I understand, but I really resent what it's done to our industry, and the way that movies are financed now.
Marketing.
It's such a different
It's
thing.
all driven by marketing.
And yeah, but even their ideas of marketing those rules are proven wrong time and time and again. The fact is, if a movie's good, people will see it,
Right.
and it will gain momentum.
And
And
I
if
thi-
it's
yeah,
opened right, it will.
And people are now turning away from marketing. I can't watch this show, Whitney. I don't care how funny it is. They drove me crazy with all the ads for this NBC comedy, Whitney. I can't stand that. It's the marketing that I'm now rejecting.
Well, and those are two really, really talented people, and I feel like it's become like I feel like they're kind of sabotaging her, and I hope she wins out, because it is so much in our face that it's kind of, smashing your nose into it. And
Yeah. Well, there's something about discovery that I think we all need in terms of whether it's music or literature or movies.
yeah, like we don't need a 5-minute trailer of the whole movie.
Oh God!
You know.
We just saw.
I
We
hate
were just at
those.
a really, really loved drive, and there was a trailer for something that I'm really looking forward to, and I shut my eyes and said,
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock
The
Holmes.
new
I said, I'm not
Sherlock
going to. I don't want to see an image.
I know. I felt like oh no, please
And
don't
at
show
the
me
end,
all that.
and that thing went on forever. I mean, I
Yeah.
could hear, but I wasn't watching. And Jamie said, I don't know what happens. I'm still.
I watch it and I still don't know what happened.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there was just cut,
It's a-
cut. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways.
But sorry.
Are you enjoying Twitter? Because we have a game here that our own Jamie created called Who Tweeted? And it's an awfully fun game to play. Would you like?
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
let's do it. Sandy,
Roll that intro.
roll the intro.
This is a new game.
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm
New to you.
nervous.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
Okay, I hope so.
You follow the Twitters?
I not as much as I used to, but
Okay.
yes, I do.
That's all right.
Yes.
As long as you are familiar with Tyra, what else we got here? Paris and Bieber.
Not that you need to follow them, but that.
Oh, okay, because I'm
You're
not.
familiar with who
but,
they are.
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay, well then
Yes.
you're going to do great. So that's that's all you really need to know.
then you're going to do great.
You're going to be fine.
You know what? Okay, I'll tell you. You should have one of those names be like Carville or something, and then see if it.
We've
Because
tried
all
variations.
those three names are kind of the same
That's
in
the
what
idea.
they tweet. I
That's
think.
the idea.
We want to make
Oh.
it difficult to be able
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
We can't make it too easy.
Well,
so
explain
here's
the damn rules.
I'm on my way. Here's how the game works.
All right.
So I'm going to read a series of 8 tweets one at a time.
Okay.
And when I start reading the tweet, as soon as you think you know who wrote it, Tyra, Paris, or Bieber,
The pressure's on.
you ring in by saying your own name, and then I'll point to you.
Oh, well, now this is way too complicated.
No,
Okay.
just say I got it. I'll point.
Instead of going, yes to no.
Oh, so I can't just say Tyra.
'Cause I'll be
I have to
reading.
go Virginia.
Yeah, and then I'll
Oh,
point to
God.
you. You,
Okay.
you don't have to say your. Just
All right.
let me know that you'll have 3 seconds to say Tyra, Paris, or Bieber.
Okay.
Ring and you get it right, you get yourself 5 points. Ring and you get it wrong, you're going to lose 3.
There's a penalty for incorrect.
You've lost me already.
No.
It's like,
Well, I know how to bring you back.
I like the simple rules of
Here's,
like password.
here's what we're playing for.
Oh.
The dancing Andrew Jackson. There he goes.
Okay.
He loves
He's
to
already
dance.
on my side.
He's already going home to
All
mom.
right.
I don't care for this Andrew Jackson prick. Dancing with the pretty girls. It's bullshit. Get over here, you in the middle. There you go.
All right.
Oh, wow, he's doing twirls. Okay.
Are you ready to play Who Tweeted?
I'm ready. Let's play Who Tweeted.
Nice.
Tweet number 1.
Tweet number 1. Over there, you.
Love making the most out of life. Feel so proud and accomplished. Never been happier.
Virginia. Bieber.
Ooh, sorry, no.
What? I would have said Bieber too. It's exactly what I was thinking.
It's probably
Yeah.
Paris.
That was Paris. It's okay.
She doesn't love life. Does she love life?
She just does.
She loves everything.
Yeah,
Why
she loves
shouldn't she?
everything.
Why shouldn't she?
Are the kids calling cock life? Is that the new word for cock?
Yes.
Okay.
Cock life? Wait, what?
Dr. Chen, you were too confident about that. Too confident. Tweet number 2.
Okay.
I'm L.A. Reid's new manager. If you need him for anything, I run the show. Hashtag swag.
Wow. Kevin Bieber.
That is correct.
Oh! I was literally guessing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That could have been it. That was a good one because there's no
Yeah.
way to tell who that was.
Yeah, because I didn't know who he was talking about. Yeah.
L.A. Reid is the he was the producer, music producer who found Justin Bieber.
Oh, well, then that was an obvious Bieber, because
Well,
he's a music
he
producer.
didn't.
I didn't know that. And I thought, anyways.
All right, here we go. Tweet number 3.
Yep.
I was nervous backstage before I went on tonight, but you were such a fierce audience. Thank you.
Virginia.
3 seconds.
Tyra.
That is correct.
Oh, bing, 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 bing,
Nicely
bing, bing,
done.
bing.
Back on the plus side. Tweet number 4.
Okay.
It's getting exciting.
Pressure's on.
Doubt me. I like it that way. Makes me work harder. Just makes.
Virginia. Bieber.
That is correct.
Wow, she's on
Nicely
fire. She's on
done.
fire. El fuego.
Now we're getting somewhere. Tweet number 5. Just finished the InStyle magazine shoot. Went amazing. Now rushing off to the airport.
Kevin Paris.
That is correct.
Oh. Such bullshit. I'm guessing.
Tweet
I'm
number
utterly guessing. I
Tweet
don't have
number
a clue.
6. Wow! Such a long day! Been in a press conference, interviews, photo shoots, a design meeting.
Virginia. Tyra.
I would have said Tyra.
I'm so sorry now.
Oh, man.
I'm so sorry now. Paris. Shockingly enough.
Damn you, Paris
Paris.
Hilton.
I know, she's
Truly.
She's undermined your every effort here.
All right. Down to the wire here. Tweet number 7. Good morning, Miami.
What?
Tune into NBC Miami today at 11 a.m. to see me on Live Miami.
Who would plug that? What of those 3 would plug that? Good Morning Miami? Why would any of
It's
them?
got to be Virginia Tyra.
That is correct.
Ah, okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
Of the 3, she would be the one.
Ladies and
Because
gentlemen,
that sounded a little too
you know what we
square
have
for
ourselves
Bieber.
here?
It's 10 to 9.
We got ourselves a 1-point game.
It's anyone's game on this answer.
This is it. It all comes down to the 8th and final tweet.
Okay.
Picnic. Where did that word come from?
Shut the fuck up! What is this?
That's meant to confuse because that could be either one of those.
Picnic? What? Say it again?
Picnic. Where did that word come from?
My head's exploding.
I would say that's Virginia Tyra. I mean Virginia Paris. It's got to be Paris.
I'm sorry. Oh! It's stupid Justin Bieber.
That prick is too young to worry about words.
Maybe they don't have picnics in Canada.
They don't have picnics in Canada. It's too cold.
But that's
dare
really,
you.
I'm so sorry.
Because I could here's what it is. Because I could picture Paris going, "Where did it come from?"
Put that in the filing cabinet.
You know.
Very well.
Thank you, Sammy.
My pleasure.
Sam Levine, ladies and
Thank you.
Jews.
Nice game. You get him next time.
The fine host of Who Tweeted.
This game is rigged.
It's rigged, man.
Rigged.
It's a fun game, though, isn't it?
For you, maybe, because you won. I'm so bitter.
I was guessing.
Too competitive for that.
I got 2 right. That's it. You worked too hard. That's what happened. Our friend Billy Bob. Love him to death.
I love Billy Bob.
Yeah.
Love
And you
that
talk
man.
about taking responsibility for your own path in life and your own diversifying.
Yes, he did that, for sure.
Pretty extraordinary story in that regard. What kind of a character actor he was. One False Move, loved him in that. The TV show with Burt Reynolds. You know, he was this heavy-set, balding kid, or so it seemed. And that was going to be his destiny. And then he completely and utterly invented a world for himself. As a filmmaker, as a storyteller, as a leading man, as an actor, of tremendous regard and reverence. No one said, I've got this for you, come over here.
Yeah.
He said, I've got to figure out a way to make this happen. What kind of an inspiration in terms of your experience working on the film with him?
Well, we had a lot in common in that way, because he worked for so many years before he found success, and so did I.
Yeah.
So we both had ridiculous stories about everything from being an extra to playing a small part to, you know, shooting ridiculous hours for ridiculous movies, and oh, that was wonderful for me to, because I didn't know that about him, but to hear him telling a story about, you know, laying in the mud in the rain for like hours when, you know, he was playing some bit part, and then he realized that he wasn't even on camera, and they'd just forgotten that he was laying there in the mud for 3 hours, but he really wanted to like stay, and like, you know, he was trying to be so professional. And to the horrible accident that he had while horseback riding and for a movie. And so it was, I think, what made him so wonderful to work with, because when you're around for a long, long time, you do appreciate being there when you get to be there.
Right.
And no matter how successful he became, he very much remembers where he came from, not just how he grew up, but all those years as a struggling actor, and not being really seen. They just don't really see you. And the worst for me, and I think he shared this with me too, was being underestimated. That made me really angry. That got me going too, because also that kind of rejection can be your inspiration if you're smart enough to look at it that way. No matter how much it hurts, it's going to, you know, make you come out of that corner fighting.
I'll show them.
And he was that kind of man. And so to, you know, for him to share stories like that with me, and to see how he treated the crew, you know, and at very, very late at night when we just maybe got a couple more hours to go.
Yeah.
But people are getting tired, and, you know, all of a sudden Billy Bob would, you know, break out with a great story for everybody. And because he is a wonderful storyteller.
Oh my. Yeah.
And it would just pick everybody up and, you know, keep everybody laughing, and he would engage people and let people engage him, and I loved working with him.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like we really fell in love with each other on that movie. I mean, you know, in the actor kind of way.
Sure.
To where you just feel almost intimate.
Kinship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a closeness. That...
And a real closeness. And if he walked in here right now, I'd jump all over him and kiss him all over, you know, because I just adore him. He's truly one of my favorite actors that I ever worked with.
Yeah, he's an extraordinary talent and a very, very huge heart. So I'm glad to hear that you had such a good experience with him.
Yeah, very generous man. Very, you know, he's a Leo.
Yeah. Oh.
He's Leo?
Yeah.
Yeah,
DiCaprio?
He's Leo.
He's Leo DiCaprio?
No, God.
Oh, sorry.
No, but he is that big cowardly lion, you know. It's so generous, and then when he needs to roar, he will become the king of the jungle, and you know, it's yeah, he's a good man to work with. And I also feel like there's a lot of boys in this town, a lot of spoiled brats in general, but there's a lot of spoiled boys in this town that behave badly or just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not studying their craft. They're not working on their lines. They're just showing up on the set with their awesomeness,
Boy, you're right about that.
you know. And it's
Sam, pay attention.
Been doing it for 15 years, and look where it's gotten me. Right here on the internet.
it is the most popular place to be, though.
Absolutely.
So, but I think there's just a lack of men, you know, where
Real men.
yes, and you're
There's
one
boys.
of them.
There's boys. Oh, listen.
You do. You are. And it's, you know, you dress well and you present yourself well and, you know.
Because I let a
you're-
woman dress me. That's why I
No.
dress well. Because I'm smart enough to let someone reinvent my
He
look.
was wearing Tommy Bahama.
I was on my way to being
Oh, no,
John
you
Lovitz.
weren't. No.
That's really where I
Don't
was headed.
shatter my image of you. Oh, God.
No, listen, there are so few men who can dress themselves. I think we know that by now.
Well, this is the explosion of cargo shorts, and it's got to stop.
It's a horrible. I saw a
It-
guy today at the airport, and I thought, really? You're 50. What's happening?
Okay, it's the cargo short and the sandals, and
She'll lose her shit if someone gets onto a plane in flip-flops.
Okay.
She'll bring the plane down.
I've been in some beautiful restaurants lately, and there'll be some D-bag who will come in like some rumply T-shirt and flip-flops, and I don't know why do they let them in.
Yeah.
Why is this allowed now? And I tweeted the other day, I just want to see the response and how much hate tweets I would get. But I said, as women, we gave up the juicy suits, you know, like the what was it, the label on the ass sweatsuits. We gave up the tracksuits as women, okay? For the most part, we did. It's, in turn, men should give up the cargo shorts. But I got the most, I didn't get like, what are you talking about? Oh, I got, oh no, but where will I carry all my stuff? And no, I love my cargo shorts. It's the only time my legs look good. Like, I got the sweetest replies from men that love their cargo shorts, and
Go back to those fisherman vests, you idiot.
I'm like, dude, you don't need that many pockets.
No.
Nobody needs pockets on their thighs. You just
and
no.
there's 3 within the pocket. There's-
Yeah, it's not, you know.
Okay.
I would have less of a problem if they just had the regular pockets. But the fact that there's like bulky stuff like hanging all the way down, and
There
then
was-
the flip flop.
There was
What?
a name
What?
for it in the 70s, 6-pocket pants. What do they, do you know what I'm talking about?
You're looking at two people that were born in 1982.
I was
Yeah,
looking
the
off.
hell's the matter with you?
I was looking off. I wasn't. There was something pocket pants, and there was a number. I thought it was. Anyways.
One time
you-
I yelled at a man for wearing sweatpants in a nice restaurant,
And
and,
that
then
man-
that ended up being Norm Macdonald.
Norm Macdonald wore sweats at the galley.
Oh, he has no excuse.
Yeah.
He should know.
I was like, who's this asshole in sweatpants? And then
'Cause
we
I would
walked out,
think-
and then our makeup girl, Samantha, was like, I think that was Norm Macdonald.
Because I would think he would be a man.
Yes.
I think he is, yeah.
He's
But not
very
if he's wearing-
He's very man-like, but he showed up at that restaurant dressed like a boy.
Do you know, like when I sign on to a movie and there's like, you know, well-known actor, and my dad, who's a retired Chicago fireman, Lieutenant Cal Madsen of the Chicago Fire Department, he even had on his license plate Lieutenant Cal. So, and he will always ask me. He goes, so, you know, oh yeah, that Billy Bob. So he a man's man. You know, he always wants to know if it's a man's man. And so I'll go, yeah, Dad, he's definitely a man's man or a switch hitter.
Wow. Those are the
That's
options.
his word for a switch hitter.
Those are the
and
options.
I go, Dad, I don't know. And he goes, oh, no, I'm not nothing against it. Nothing against
I'm
it.
not
just saying,
judging.
you know, it's crazy out there, but it is that way in the world. I have no problem with it. No problem at all. And you should get married. If they want to get married, no problem.
Oh,
He really, but that's his word for it.
that's pretty great. Switch hitter.
Switch hitter.
Buffering gag?
No, I'm looking at Dr. Chen.
I thought it was a buffering gag, so I froze. I went with you.
Oh, love that. Do we have time for Dennis Hopper? You work with
I
so
hope
many
so.
of my heroes. It's just uncanny.
Oh, he was so wonderful.
This was fairly early, right? This project?
Well, it was after, I'm so sorry, that wonderful it wasn't Colors. Was it Colors?
Colors, yeah,
Yeah.
with Sean Penn and
This was after Colors,
Right.
so I was really excited to work with him, and this was a script that had been floating around town for a long time, so it was finally getting made, and I said, you know, Dennis, I've gotten a lot of criticism for the fact that I showed my tits a couple times in films, and I've been really, really sidelined because of that. And I, you know, and well, Dennis, you know, I just think, you know, there's a lot of, and I'm just thinking that maybe there might be times, and he was like, oh man, are you trying to tell me like you don't want to be naked, man? And I go, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's, and he goes, oh, it's fine, I know, it's really awful to do that. Yeah, I'll get a body double, no problem, you know. And he was just so delightful. Like,
Right.
he was such a wonderful man, and he was, and so there was this shot in the movie, which I don't usually, I shouldn't tell people this anymore. Because I used to say, oh, it's a man, it's a body double. Oh. You know, now I'm like, thank you. Yes, thank you. That was my ass. But in fact, it wasn't. But there was this one big ass shot that I...
Big shot involving an ass.
Yeah, I had to take off all my clothes and jump in the water. And so we had to... he brought a bunch of strippers from the local community to audition for my ass.
From the local community.
He said, well, you should be in here, man, because it's like, what kind of ass do you want to have, you know? And I go,
Jesus.
oh, well, I don't know. I just a nice heart shape, kind of, you know.
I was thinking about a peach.
And so, we are in his trailer.
Sure.
And there were 6 or 7 strippers
Send in the clowns.
that came in, because we weren't in a location where there were body doubles, and I don't even know if, I think they might have called them that back then. And so they all, like, kind of took off their pants. And suddenly there was this furious knocking on the trailer door, and this young intern was like, I'm so sorry, Mr. Hopper, I just have to come in. He was like, come on in. And this very, very young man came in and was like, I'm so sorry, Dennis, but and he stood there and he looked at all these girls who were like, huh? And then all these line of beautiful, if I even could say, beautiful naked bums, and then Dennis and I just sitting there looking at him. And I mean,
this
what
poor
that
kid.
must have looked like, and he goes, and he looked at me and he went, I'm so sorry.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know what he thought we were doing in there, but he you know, rushed out, and Dennis said, yo, stay, man, stay, you know, help us figure out which one we like. And this poor guy, like, rushed from the trailer, and I don't even think he stayed on the show much longer.
He
after
probably
that.
called his mom and said, this show business is too much for me.
But yes, he was a really wonderful, beautiful, whimsical.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah,
like he
delightful man.
always played a variation of his personality. And,
Yeah,
you know,
certainly.
we get certain sense from certain movie stars that they're playing within a pretty tight-knit grouping of who they are, but, you know, whether it's Cary Grant or Bill Murray, that there's not much range. But in his case, his characters were always riveting, and yet there was this sort of spacey of thought. Almost like the character he played in Easy Rider all the way through to the end. Like, we knew from the first time we saw him this touchstone of a slightly askew version of life.
Yes.
And right?
Yeah.
And then also this really loving and accepting heart.
Well, he had like a childlike delight
Right.
in his eyes, and he had a wicked, infectious laugh.
Right.
He had
So
that, and a very distinctive voice.
Yeah.
And I think those things are carried through whatever he did, and there's a real soulfulness about that man.
And then when he worked with David Lynch in Blue Velvet, it was even more haunting.
Oh God.
because it was such a
Could
departure.
not watch him in that movie.
Because it was such a departure, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
so not this hippie who we fell in love with. You know, even when he's playing was it a photographer in Apocalypse Now? I think that's the character ultimately was a photographer, but he was part of Colonel Kurt's group of idiots. But that was an expression of that hippie that had got lost in the jungle, and I still felt this connection. So when he did the
Yeah.
Blue Velvet, it was like, what fucking happened? What a brilliant performance is what I'm saying
he
ultimately.
created some kind of weird kink in that man
Yeah.
that was so beyond understanding
It was
and yet
perfectly
so
outside.
necessary for that man's very life. Like his life depended on that kink.
Yeah.
And so the desperation of that, or the necessity of that, I think made that you
Scary.
couldn't turn away from it.
Right.
It made it scary, but it also made it understandable.
Right.
You
Or
know?
at least of this world. Like we've seen enough damaged goods out there to believe this sort of thing, this sort of person existed and could be next door. That
Yeah.
It was that connection to a real person while being a monster.
Yeah. It was very,
But being
Very
directed,
hard
being
for-
directed by him was,
oh, that was just fun.
yeah.
Just really fun.
Real trusting an actor, directing actors is always a joy, I
Yeah.
find.
It was like he really had that sense of play.
Yeah.
He really had that sense of magic time and playing dress up and Don was pain in the ass, you know. And everybody knows I never edit that part of the story, but he was. And
He's one of those guys that seems to pride himself on that. We don't need to go there, but
he
if you put it out there, guess what? People end up talking about it.
and because I really loved Dennis and I really respected him. I had a great deal of respect for him. And so when you're working with a director that you respect and you really want to follow their vision of the movie, and someone is trying to constantly undermine that with their faux genius, it's very sad.
Yeah.
It's sad to watch that.
It really is.
But it's frustrating for the crew. It's frustrating for everyone. And Dennis had a lot of patience, and he had a lot of patience with me. And Jennifer Connelly was so beautiful. Oh my God, she was 19.
Holy crap.
And I think I was I think I was 28 at that point. So I felt so much older than her. I felt like she was just a kid. And she was so exceptional. Like, her presence was very exceptional. Like, we had dailies, which back then,
Wow.
you know.
Remember those?
And yeah, and Dennis had him like on film in a theater.
Yeah.
In this little theater. And he had popcorn, and
Oh.
everyone could come and watch.
Oh.
And sometimes there were dailies where we wanted to see it again of her. And they'd play it again there was a close-up where she wasn't speaking. And she was just standing, listening, or she was watching in the car dealership office. And she was supposed to watch me talk to, you know, Don or something in the distance. And that's all she was doing. And she was just kind of, you know, it almost looked as though they shot it in slow motion, the way she blinked her eyes. And she had this one perfect little strand of hair that kind of caressed her cheek
Right.
and then blew away. But there was so much going on with her,
Yeah.
so much in there. It was very deep, and it wasn't just physical beauty, because
Right.
that's easy to find out here. But there was something much deeper in her, and it was really great to see her find such success, you know. That was very satisfying for me to see that happen for her.
Yeah, must be. That's a great memory. As is getting a chance to have dailies. I think only once.
Oh, Robert Altman's dailies, those are the best.
Oh, that must have been a party.
Oh, it was. Well, he was famous. Like, this was a thing I'd read about. Like, that the dailies for a Robert Altman movie were like this thing, you know, and I thought, oh, if we go there on the movie, you know, he was going through chemo, and I didn't think we were going to do it.
Right.
So I asked about it, and I said, do you think you would do that again? And he was like, of course we're gonna do it, girl. And and so they had, you know, they'd have pizza and wine and, you know, great coffee and, you know, whatever everyone's poison was would be there. And then they still showed, even though it was now digital,
Right.
they still showed dailies. And everybody commented, and then he'd ask everyone's opinion after the dailies were over, because that's how confident he was.
Wow.
That's how confident he was.
Yeah.
And so that was, I felt really,
What an extraordinary opportunity.
yeah, I didn't think that would be, nobody thought that would be Altman's last film,
No.
you know, but it was, I feel especially blessed to have been on that one.
As we do that you were here today. How's that?
Nicely done,
Feel
sir.
like a button?
That was a very nice button.
Well, I feel like at 2 hours and 30 minutes we've kept you. Yeah.
See, you can't let actors do that. If you get us to talk about ourselves, it'll be like, you please don't put this on. You cannot let...
It's been streaming the whole time.
My darling.
Fucking kidding
My
me.
darling,
we're
you're
live.
far from
Well,
the record.
why didn't you? You've got to get better at cutting.
No! My darling, this is...
I'm getting texts like, shut up. What are you doing?
I have tricked you into staying this long, and now I feel bad. No, this was for our selfish wishes and benefit that you were here this
You have to steer it away.
No,
To come
no.
to a quicker conclusion.
There was some steering, believe me. There was some steering. You were not allowed to ramble. I assure you.
God.
Yeah, no, you'll be happy. I would like you to compose yourself for your Larry King game. You were threatened 2.5 hours ago.
Oh, God, we're still going to...
I'll give you the rules again. It's a bad Larry King impression. You heard mine. Horrible. I don't want a good one. I want a bad Larry King impression.
It's the only kind I do.
Excellent. And in that moment where Larry just shares something, it's a too much information moment, right? And then you go to the phone. You're trying to remember what city you want to throw it to.
I don't.
So you know the basic rules. I can't thank you enough. This was really fun, honest to goodness.
So where am I doing?
That's your camera.
Okay.
Right there. When you're ready,
Can you see my shoulders going up?
give us some blades. Give us some shoulder blade. Yeah.
I gotta do the thing you're doing. Okay, ready?
Yeah. Nice. Commitment.
Okay, wait. My suspenders aren't actually the fact that I have no ass. They're actually a harness holding up my enormous ball sack. See me differently now, don't you? Schenectady! You're on.
Schenectady, the great go-to. That was beautiful.
I can't believe I said that all
Oh, please. Please, that was beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Honestly. Really terrific.
I'm very upset that I said ball sack.
Okay, yeah, us too. Great going, and thank you tremendously.
Thank you.
And now please sit there uncomfortably for 60 seconds while I wrap things up for the folks watching us worldwide on the web. There you have it, the Virginia Madsen, ladies and Jews, bring those paws together. Stay away from the veal. That's a really honest and open and sharing journey we just took there, and I'm extremely grateful for the time. Next week, we'll have a fabulously talented Chris Pratt, who I just saw on the Moneyball. He's pretty damn terrific, this guy. Yeah. Aside from being the quirky, weird, funny guy on Parks and Rec. Jamie will not be here. She will be living out her own fantasy in the Disney World of Orlando. Dressed as a princess, and we'll have photographic evidence. Sammy?
Yeah, buddy.
I trust you'll be here.
I wouldn't miss it.
Okay. Dr. Chen, can you make it? Excellent. On the outer edges
Should we
there,
bring you a pillow?
thank you to the crew outside the studio in Josh Negrin and Jason McIntyre and Emily Goodwin and Samantha Ward in makeup and our fabulous, fearless leader, Mike Rotman. And Elaine Ewing, our social media gal who stopped by earlier. I think they've probably gone by now. But she pointed out also that I somehow made the news in Chicago by dining at the American Joe's for crap. I didn't know. And she said, yeah, we better be careful where we eat now. Apparently, we make the news when we eat.
No, seafood is trafe.
So that might have been the story.
It was
big
a
Jew
big
holiday, and
the
I'm eating
big Jew
trafe.
holiday, and you're eating trafe.
I don't
How
want to
dare
forget
you.
Adam, thankfully, of course, our wonderful intern who we made reference to earlier. who's kicking some ass for us. You'll see his name in the credits, I hope. We have his name in the credits, don't we? Yeah. Oh, good. Should be. He's really helped out tremendously, and we're all gonna go as a field trip when he's at school next week. Look for Virginia and myself in a very, very small way in a new Rob Reiner film called Summer at Dog Dave's. We have a release date on that? I don't think so.
I think sometime around Easter.
I'm going to say around Easter.
Yeah.
Feels right. Feels like an Easter movie. Nope. Not Summer
You
at
think
Dog
Easter,
Dave's.
you think Rob Reiner film.
I think Earthquake Henry Winkler sitting at this table,
Oh, that's right.
who was also in Chicago. It's all coming full circle. It's a big Chicago weekend.
Yeah.
Go Cubs.
All right.
It's a hell
Until
of a town.
it's a toddling town, if
It
I'm not
is.
mistaken.
Town that Billy Sunday couldn't shut down.
He tried.
I do love the Chi-Town. I'm not sure anyone there likes it when you say that, so I apologize if I offended. All right, so more to come. Until next week, and as always, get out of my face.